Chapter 11-12. In fact, before Ji Tianqing broke the seal, Burial of Heaven had warned him. The reason why he could break the seal so easily and quickly was because Burial of Heaven had told him how to break it. At that time, the situation was urgent, so he didn't ask for the reason and directly broke the seal. Now that the seal had been broken and the treasure box had been opened, he obviously had to ask clearly. Burial of Heaven said in a low voice, "The seal on the treasure box is called the 18 Constellations Illusory Sun Formation. It's a formation created by Kenshin." Hearing this explanation, Ji Tianqing suddenly understood. But he felt more and more puzzled and asked, why would a formation created by Kenshin appear on this treasure box? Could it be that he set it up himself? Could it be that the things in this treasure box were put in by him? Burial of Heaven said with certainty, "Of course not." Kenshin taught the 18 Constellations Illusory Sun Formation to 2 of his followers. I suspect that this treasure box was sealed by one of his disciples. Kenshin's followers? Ji Tianqing's eyes suddenly lit up, and a hint of surprise flashed in his eyes. Long Zitian just said that this treasure box was a gift from Divine General Dong Lin. Since that's the case, I have to find time to visit Xiao Han. At this time, everyone in the hall urged Ji Tianqing to open the treasure box and see what treasure was inside. So, he hurriedly gathered his thoughts and reached out to open the lid of the treasure box. The moment the treasure box was opened, a dazzling starlight bloomed from the treasure box, illuminating the entire hall in a dazzling silver. The surging and mighty power of the stars, along with a cold and invisible force, spread out in all directions. Suddenly, the entire hall was enveloped by the silver starlight, and became cool and quiet. The guests present all trembled, their minds and spiritual senses were cleansed, and their spirits were shaken, and their emotions were calmed down. This made everyone realize that the mysterious treasure in the treasure box had the effect of cleansing the soul, and was greatly beneficial to martial artists' cultivation. Everyone revealed curious and expectant eyes, staring at the treasure box, and couldn't wait to see the treasure inside. Ji Tianqing was also full of anticipation. Looking into the treasure box, he saw 2 half-foot-tall crystal bottles in the treasure box. The transparent crystal bottles were filled with silver fine sand. Every grain of fine sand was uniform, shining with the brilliance of the stars, and contained a vast and majestic power. The fine sand in the 2 crystal bottles, who knew how many grains of fine sand there were, contained incomparably terrifying power of the stars. When Ji Tianqing saw the fine sand in the crystal bottles clearly, his eyebrows raised, a hint of surprise flashed in his eyes. "It's actually star sand. That's great." Buried Heaven's voice rang in his head as well. He sounded rather excited as he said, "That's right, Tianqing. You've picked up a treasure today. This is the star sand from the star of the outer space. If you can obtain the other 2 materials, it won't be long before the divine sword is restored to the primordial spirit level, comparable to a divine artifact." Of the many guests in the hall, there were some experienced and knowledgeable powerhouses that recognized the star sand in the crystal bottles, and they all let out gasps of disbelief. "Wah! It's actually the legendary star sand. No wonder it contains such a terrifying and vast power of the stars. Star sand, that is a top refining material. It's said that it can be used to refine divine artifacts. The last time someone auctioned star sand in Central State City was 100 years ago. For the last 100 years, this treasure has been priceless, and it's hard to find. Hee. The value of star sand cannot be measured with spirit stones. Even an ancient family might not have such a treasure. Heavens! Divine General Dong Lin is too extravagant. He actually took out star sand as a congratulatory gift to His Highness the Third Prince. The Third Prince said before that this congratulatory gift was sealed in the treasure box, and even Divine General Dong Lin didn't know what was inside. If Divine General Dong Lin knew that the treasure box contained star sand, his intestines would probably turn green from regret, right? Everyone look. His Highness the Third Prince's face doesn't look too good. If he knew that the congratulatory gift was star sand, he wouldn't have taken it out as a prize, right? AI. This time Ji Tianqing is really lucky. Look at his smiling face. He really picked up a treasure. The powerhouses and young elites in the hall understood the preciousness and rarity of star sand. They were all excited to the extreme, and were incomparably envious of Ji Tianqing. Long Zai Tian's face was also somewhat dark. His fists in his sleeves were secretly clenched, and he was so angry that he gnashed his teeth. Just as everyone had guessed, He also didn't know that the treasure box contained star sand. He originally thought that Divine General Donglin was just a casual acquaintance with him, and they didn't have any friendship at all. It was impossible for him to take out such a precious gift. Therefore, he pretended to be generous and took out this congratulatory gift as a prize to liven up the atmosphere. But he never would have thought that the treasure box contained the priceless star sand. This time, he could be considered to have lifted a rock and smashed it on his own foot. He had given away a priceless treasure for nothing. The most important thing was that the person who had obtained this priceless treasure was his life and death enemy, Ji Tianqing. This made him so angry that he almost vomited blood, as if he had eaten a fly. But in public, in front of all the guests, he still had to maintain his poise and bearing. He couldn't show any signs of regret, and he couldn't go back on his words. What was even more infuriating was that Ji Tianqing had taken advantage of him and was still acting innocent. He kept the star sand and the treasure box into his interspatial ring. He even cupped his hands towards Long Zai Tian and said with a smile, "Aya, I didn't expect the third prince to be so generous. It's really inconceivable. This seat thanks you. This priceless treasure will be accepted by this seat. I hope the third prince won't go back on his words." Long Zai Tian was so angry in his heart that he couldn't wait to tear him into pieces. But under the watchful eyes of everyone, he could only endure the pain and anger in his heart. He barely squeezed out a smile and pretended to be generous. Territorial Lord Tianqing must be joking. This seat will definitely not go back on his words. You can break the seal of the treasure box, so this treasure is naturally yours. Ji Tianqing nodded in agreement and said, "Well, this is more like the demeanor of the third prince." After saying that, he turned around with a smile and returned to his seat. Hundreds of people in the main hall looked at him with envy, and they were still discussing and exclaiming. The Yangon Region Lord and the Horizontal Water Lord looked at Long Zai Tian with strange eyes, and then looked at Ji Tianqing. They muttered in their hearts, "Today is obviously the third prince's birthday. He should be the focus of the audience. How could Ji Tianqing steal the limelight and become dim? Ji Tianqing, this guy's performance today is really too eye-catching. Not only did he suppress the two region lords, but he also humiliated the two region lords and made the third prince vomit blood." Chapter 11-13. The matter of cracking the mysterious box was just a small episode before the banquet. The third prince's original intention was to use the mysterious box to liven up the atmosphere and win over the Yong and region lord. However, the final result was beyond his expectations. He not only lost the priceless treasure, the star sand, but also lost the opportunity to win over the Yong and region lord. The most infuriating thing was that the star sand was obtained by Ji Tianqing. He would rather give this gift to a stranger than see it fall into the hands of Ji Tianqing. In this way, he could be considered to have suffered a double loss and suffered a huge loss. After the matter was over, he casually found an excuse and left. The rest of the people stayed in the main hall and were still discussing the previous matter. Ji Tianqing became the focus of the whole banquet. He was envied by everyone and became the core of everyone's discussion. The Yong and region lord, the horizontal water lord, the city lords and the powerhouses all clustered around Ji Tianqing. They constantly complimented and flattered him. They admired and respected him very much. Even some young talents gathered their courage and came over to pay their respects to Ji Tianqing. They wanted to be familiar with him. At least, when these people went back, they could boast to their peers that they had met Ji Tianqing and had a warm conversation with him. For them, this was not only something to brag about, but also a supreme honor. Ji Tianqing's reaction was dull. He politely declined the flattery and praise of the people and did not respond. Unknowingly, 2 hours passed. It was already late, and the sun was setting in the evening. The main hall was bustling with noise for a long time. Then, a guard commander entered the main hall and loudly announced that the banquet was about to begin. Everyone quieted down and gradually calmed down. Not long after, a group of young and beautiful maids served all kinds of delicious food and wine and placed them on the long narrow tables in front of the guests. In the square outside the main hall, big red lanterns were lit and a raging bonfire was lit. There were also countless delicious food, wine, fruits and pastries placed on the long narrow tables around the square for the guests to enjoy. There were also some graceful dancers and singers playing beautiful music in the square and dancing gracefully. The atmosphere inside and outside the main hall was jubilant. Countless guests were singing and dancing, celebrating Long Zaiqian's birthday. Long Zai Tian also brought the housekeeper and the imperial bodyguard commander back to the main hall. He sat down at the head of the table and accompanied everyone to the banquet. After a period of adjustment, his state of mind and expression had returned to normal. He had a smile on his face, and his expression was as calm as usual. There was not the slightest bit of anger or depression, as if nothing had happened in the afternoon. Moreover, when he was chatting and drinking with everyone, he would intentionally or unintentionally glance at Ji Tianqing, his eyes flashing with a mocking sneer. Ji Tianqing had been drinking silently, occasionally listening to the conversations of the crowd. He inadvertently discovered Long Zai Tian's abnormality, and slightly frowned, thinking in his heart, Long Zai Tian, this guy, has a sinister and despicable appearance. Don't tell me he wants to use some scheme again? He sensed that Long Zai Tian had bad intentions, so he secretly raised his vigilance. Unknowingly, an hour passed. The lively and noisy banquet was about to come to an end. Many guests were slightly tipsy and left the banquet, returning to their residence to rest. The Yangon region ruler followed Ji Tianqing to leave the banquet. After leaving the main hall, they were led by the imperial bodyguard captain to rest in the courtyard. Under the instructions of Long Zai Tian, the imperial bodyguard captain arranged for the two to stay in the plum blossom courtyard. There were a total of 3 people living in this small house. In addition to the 2 of them, there was also the horizontal water domain lord. Ji Tianqing and the Yangon region ruler walked together. After returning to the courtyard, they said goodbye to each other and returned to their rooms. When Ji Tianqing entered the room, he was shocked by the scene in the room. His residence was a set of rooms. In the middle was a spacious living room, and on both sides were a study and a bedroom. The back of the study was connected to the back garden, and the bedroom was also connected to a secret room for practice. The room was decorated very luxuriously. It looked splendid with gold and jade, and there was a light red light burning, revealing a charming atmosphere that made one's heart itch. Moreover, there were bronze incense burners in the living room and bedroom, burning with a refreshing and enchanting fragrance. That kind of invisible fragrance quietly seeped into the mind and soul, making one's heart full of restlessness and desire. Their whole body would heat up, and they couldn't wait to find a few beauties to quench their thirst. Ji Tianqing sensed that something was wrong. He frowned and looked at the situation in the bedroom. He saw that on the wide wooden bed surrounded by white gauze curtains, there was a red brocade quilt embroidered with mandarin ducks. A beautiful girl with skin as tender as jade, wearing only a red doudou, was lying in the quilt, leaning on the bed, looking at him with blurred eyes. "Young master, you're finally back. I've been waiting for you for a long time." The beautiful and delicate young girl slightly raised her body, revealing her long black hair that draped over her fair and delicate shoulders like a waterfall. She had a shy and timid posture, and her charming face was a little red as she looked at Ji Tianqing, her eyes full of admiration and desire. If it was any normal man, in this kind of restless environment, seeing such a breathtaking beauty, they would let their imagination run wild. Especially when that beautiful girl put on a posture of letting him do whatever he wanted, and let him enjoy her to his heart's content. This made people unable to restrain the prairie fire in their hearts, and they couldn't wait to pounce on her and enjoy her to their heart's content. However, Ji Tianqing resisted the restlessness in his soul, and his heart was calm. He looked at her with clear and cold eyes and asked in a deep voice, "Who are you? Why are you in my room?" That charming girl was also stunned for a moment, and immediately revealed a trace of a young and charming smile, and explained, "Young master, I'm here to serve you." Other than this servant, the other guests in these courtyards all have their own personal attendants. They are all 1 in 1,000 beauties. The meaning of the young girl's words was obviously hinting to Ji Tianqing that he didn't need to feel embarrassed, as every guest had a beautiful woman to accompany them. However, Ji Tianqing frowned, and expressionlessly said to her, "I'm not resting, and still need to meditate and cultivate. Please leave." That charming girl obviously didn't expect him to be such an unromantic person, and immediately revealed a wronged expression. Timidly lowering her head, she said, "Young master, could it be that you think I'm a prostitute and think I'm not clean? You've misunderstood. I'm also the young miss of an official's family, and until now, I've still been a virgin for 16 years, and I've never been touched by a strange man. Moreover, I'm just following the master's orders. If you let me leave, the master will punish me, and I'll be punished." Saying this, she lifted the red brocade quilt, and lifted a pair of white and tender, slender and long legs. She walked in front of Ji Tianqing and knelt down. She stretched out her smooth arms, and with her soft and boneless hands, hugged Ji Tianqing's legs, and bitterly begged, "Young master, how can you bear to let me be tortured and punished?" Chapter 11:14. If it were an ordinary man, like Ji Tianqing, who was young and vigorous, he might have agreed. After all, the girl looked so pitiful. She was begging in a soft voice. It was hard for him to refuse. Most importantly, although this girl was not as beautiful as Ji Ku and Yun Yao, she was still a one-in-a-million beauty. Such a beautiful girl kneeling down and begging to warm the bed and serve him. Which normal man would refuse? Who wouldn't be tempted? Unfortunately, Ji Tianqing was not a normal man, let alone an ordinary man. He expressionlessly looked at the pretty girl, his eyes staring into her eyes, ignoring the fact that she was only wearing a doo-doo. His lips curled into a cold smile. How can a lady from an ordinary official's family reach the second level of Sky Origin stage in her 20s? If you are really a lady from an official's family, you should have never done any household chores. Your hands should be as white as jade. However, there is a layer of calluses on your palms. Your bones are also a little deformed. Obviously, it is caused by long-term sword practice. What's more, you are using a double-edged sword. Your martial art is light and soft. Hearing his words, the pretty girl's delicate body trembled, and her face turned pale. Her gaze was somewhat evasive as she didn't dare to look directly into Ji Tianqing's sharp eyes. She slightly lowered her head and didn't know how to explain herself. She didn't know that she had tried to erase the traces of martial arts on her body. She even used a secret treasure to cover her aura. However, Ji Tianqing still managed to see through her disguise at first glance. He even managed to guess the attributes of her weapon and cultivation technique with just a little bit of information. It was terrifying. However, she had been through strict training. She was mentally strong. She came back to her senses immediately. She looked at Ji Tianqing with her clear eyes and said sincerely, "Master, in this world of martial arts, if I didn't know martial arts, how could I survive until now? No matter what, I don't have any grudges with you. I don't even know you. Why would I hurt you? This servant is only following the master's instructions to serve you, this esteemed guest, with a pure body. It is enough to make you comfortable and satisfied. After a night of entanglement, this servant will no longer have anything to do with you, and will not investigate your identity. What else are you worried about?" Ji Tianqing curled his lips and sneered calmly, "Even if I am a lecherous man who wants to spend a night with a beauty, I will never share a bed with you. I'm a man with a family. Moreover, my wife is a world-famous, devastatingly beautiful heaven's proud daughter, as pure and holy as a fairy from the ninth heaven. Do you think that I'm used to seeing fairies in the heavens? Do you think that I'll be interested in the vulgar women of the mortal world? Go back and tell Long Zai Tian that the beauty trap is useless against me. If he really wants to deal with me, ask him to use his brain more." With that, he urged the pretty girl to put on her clothes and leave. The young girl was on the verge of tears. With a face full of grievance, she said, "Young master, this servant knows that you are a person like the stars in the sky. With this servant's looks, it is impossible for this servant to be associated with you. But when this servant was sent into the room, I only had this doo-doo covering my body. Could it be that young master wants this servant to leave like this? If others see this servant in such an embarrassing state, this servant might as well die." Ji Tianqing was speechless. In his heart he thought, Long Zai Tian, this dog, is really despicable and shameless. "All right, if you don't want to leave, then I'll leave." He left without looking back and walked out of the room. The pretty girl cried out and immediately stretched out her soft arms, tightly hugging his thighs. Her whole body hung on his body. "Young master, this servant begs you. Please be merciful and pamper this servant." Ji Tianqing turned around indifferently. He stretched out his hand and pointed at her neck, sealing her acupuncture point and all her strength. The young girl was unable to move. Her body stood stiffly in the room, and she couldn't even open her mouth to speak. Ji Tianqing waved his hand again and picked up the red brocade blanket from the bed. He wrapped the young girl tightly and threw her onto the bed. "Stay here obediently. When the sun rises, your acupuncture point will naturally be unsealed. At that time, you can leave on your own." After saying that, he left the room without looking back. His figure disappeared into the night. The young girl was wrapped up like a dumpling by the red blanket. She lay on the bed, unable to move. She could only watch as Ji Tianqing left. She stared at his back with her eyes wide open. She let out a whimper. After a while, when Ji Tianqing was far away and the sound of his footsteps disappeared, she finally calmed down. She furrowed her willowy eyebrows. Her originally clear and kind eyes flashed with a gloomy cold light. After Ji Tianqing left the plum blossom courtyard, he secretly used a secret technique to hide his tracks and aura. Then, he headed towards the third courtyard. He had been thinking about the mysterious secret room in the third courtyard's hidden dragon palace. Previously, he had used his soul to investigate. The celestial puppet had entered the secret room and taken out the mysterious treasure box containing the star sand. Through the expressions of Long Zitian and the celestial puppet, he could determine that the secret room was very important. It was very likely that it contained Long Zitian's treasures and secrets. There might even be some clues that could be used against him. Tonight was an excellent opportunity. He came to the Flying Dragon Palace openly. Long Zitian was still in the main hall of the front courtyard, drinking and chatting with the guests. Tomorrow, he would leave the Flying Dragon Palace. If he didn't take advantage of tonight to sneak into the secret room and investigate, how could he be satisfied? After 100 breaths of time, he quietly went around a dozen sentry posts and avoided dozens of guards. He was outside the Hidden Dragon Palace. Under the curtain of night, the Hidden Dragon Palace was quiet and the lights were dim. Other than a dozen red lanterns hanging at the entrance of the main hall and under the eaves of the corridors, there was not a trace of light in the palace. Ji Tianqing observed his surroundings for a while. After confirming that it was safe, he secretly used the Earth Escape technique and sneaked into the Hidden Dragon Palace from underground. Of course, there was also a spirit grade array blocking him underground. He spent a bit of effort and wasted an hour before he broke open a crack in the array. Then, he passed through the crack in the array and came out of the ground. He appeared in the dark and lightless main hall. Whoosh! Like a ghost, he silently came out of the ground. But just as he steadied himself, before he could see the scene in the main hall, a low shout came from behind him. Who is it? How dare you intrude into the Hidden Dragon Palace? You're courting death. As the murderous roar resounded, a dark red saber light chopped down at lightning speed. He didn't have time to turn around. He threw out a giant golden palm and slapped it at the blade light. Bang! With a muffled sound, the blood-red blade light was smashed into pieces. The giant golden palm struck a figure, sending that person flying backward and crashing into the wall. Chapter 11:15. Ji Tianqing naturally knew that the real Tuoba Rue had died long ago. The demon youth in front of him that looked like Tuoba Rue was actually a celestial puppet transformed from the heaven-swallowing beast. After a year, the celestial puppet's strength was even greater than before. It had reached the second level of the soul refinement realm. Ji Tianqing frowned and looked at the celestial puppet sharply, observing its changes. At this time, the celestial puppet crawled up from the ground. Dark red bloodlight surged from its body as it waved its palms and attacked again. He unleashed all of his power and condensed a dozen blood-red sharp blades, stabbing towards Ji Tianqing from all directions. Ji Tianqing did not want to be entangled with it too much to avoid causing too much commotion and alerting the guards outside the Hidden Dragon Palace. In order to end the battle quickly, he did not hesitate to use his divine spirit sword and attacked the celestial puppet with all his strength. Swoosh! Swoosh! 2 divine soul golden swords, each more than 3 feet long, shot out, one from the left and one from the right. In an instant, they destroyed several bloody blades and struck the celestial capital puppet. Bam bam! 2 muffled sounds rang out at almost the same time, echoing in the palace. The celestial puppet's chest and throat were pierced by the divine spirit golden swords. It flew back a dozen steps and crashed into the wall again. There were 2 fist-sized wounds that went through the front and back. Dark red blood constantly gushed out. The celestial puppet crashed into the wall and fell to the ground. After rolling a few times, it stopped and could no longer move. Its physical body had been destroyed and it died on the spot. However, its divine spirit flew out of the corpse and burrowed into the ground with a swoosh, disappearing. Ji Tianqing hurriedly withdrew the 2 divine spirit golden swords and used his divine spirit power to track down the celestial puppet's divine spirit. He found that the celestial puppet's divine spirit did not escape outside the palace. Instead, it burrowed deep into the ground and escaped into the secret room. This damned monster is really loyal. Its physical body was destroyed, but its divine spirit still wants to protect that secret room. This made him even more certain that the secret room hid a huge secret. Otherwise, the celestial puppet would not protect it so desperately. Unfortunately, the secret chamber was hidden deep underground and was protected by a powerful formation. The celestial puppet was very familiar with the formation of the secret chamber. It could pass through the protective formation and burrow into the secret chamber from underground. Yet, he could only walk to the corner of the hall and unleash boundless magic power from his palm, activating the mechanism array on the wall. Previously, when the celestial capital puppet had opened the door to the secret chamber, he had secretly memorized the method to open it. Sure enough, when he finished casting the spell, the wall made a muffled sound, and a stone door immediately opened. Shwa! Without hesitation, he stepped through the stone door and entered a dimly lit passageway. The passage made of rocks twisted and turned downwards, all the way to the depths of the earth. He flew in the tunnel for 10 breaths of time and arrived several hundred meters underground. He entered a secret room. This secret chamber had a radius of over 1,000 meters. It was huge and spacious, and there were rows of stone lamps on the walls, emitting a dim yellow light. The scene in the secret chamber was out of Ji Tianqing's expectations. He frowned on the spot, revealing a look of vigilance and wariness. He saw that on the walls of the secret chamber, there were many hidden compartments, used to store all kinds of treasures and resources. On the wide floor of the secret chamber, on the dark stone floor, there were countless complex patterns, outlining a huge formation pattern. And in the middle of the secret chamber, there was a 100-meter-tall, 5-colored altar. The altar was like a pyramid. Its appearance was simple and crude, and the runes and patterns carved on it were very exquisite and mysterious. Its entire body emitted a colorful brilliance, and it rippled with boundless and mighty power. Ji Tianqing was no stranger to this altar. This was Long Zai Tian's strongest trump card, the venomous insect Dao artifact, the origin of all venomous insects. The origin of all venomous insects is Long Zai Tian's strongest trump card. He has always carried it with him. How could he have placed it in this secret chamber? Ji Tianqing frowned, his heart full of doubts. He vaguely had a bad premonition, and he was secretly on guard. At this moment, the formation patterns on the floor of the secret chamber suddenly lit up with a dazzling 5-colored brilliance. Swoosh! The 5-colored brilliance appeared out of thin air, condensing into a light shield of 1,000 meters, like an inverted bowl, enveloping the entire secret chamber. The area of 1,000 meters was sealed and imprisoned. Ji Tianqing was inside the 5-colored light shield. He only felt that it was difficult to breathe and move. There was an invisible force coming from all directions, suppressing him like a mountain, making him feel as if he was trapped in a quagmire. At the same time, at the top of the 5-colored altar, 2 figures suddenly appeared. The leader was wearing a golden dragon robe and a golden dragon crown. He was tall and burly, exuding a confident and arrogant domineering aura. He was the third prince, Long Zai Tian. The figure behind him was a demon clan youth, and it was the heavenly puppet that had escaped into the secret chamber just now. Long Zai Tian looked down at Ji Tianqing from above, and sneered complacently. Ji Tianqing, you are truly audacious, coming to Flying Dragon City alone, and even daring to barge into my secret chamber at night. I did not guess wrongly. I had long expected that you would barge in here, so I prepared a big surprise for you in advance. Ha ha. Ji Tianqing raised his head to look at the top of the altar, and after seeing Long Zai Tian and the heavenly puppet, his expression immediately changed, and his eyes became extremely solemn. Damn it! This was actually Long Zai Tian's scheme. This dog. He had long expected that I would barge into the secret chamber, and actually set up an ambush here in advance. Seeing that the heavenly puppet was intact, he immediately understood that the puppet's body that he had destroyed in the main hall was just a substitute. Long Zai Tian had long planned and arranged it. He stared coldly at Long Zai Tian and shouted in a deep voice, Long Zai Tian, you are truly sinister and despicable. Long Zai Tian grinned and said with a sneer, Hee hee, this is my wisdom, to be able to predict the enemy's actions, and only then can I make you walk right into my trap. This time, you clearly came to Flying Dragon City with ill intentions, and repeatedly embarrassed me. How can I let you off so easily? Ji Tianqing, tonight is the day of your death, and our grudges will be settled immediately. Stop resisting stubbornly. Kneel down and surrender. Ji Tianqing raised his eyebrows and said with a disdainful sneer, Long Zai Tian, you are too confident and arrogant. With just you and a heavenly puppet, you dare to say that you can kill me? Long Zai Tian nodded his head slightly, and said with a sneer, With the strength of this heavenly puppet and we really don't have the confidence to kill you. But what about with the help of these two experts? As soon as he finished speaking, two middle-aged men appeared beside him. These two people stood on his left and right, and looked at Ji Tianqing with a sneer on their faces. Ji Tianqing instantly recognized them. They were the 100 Basin Lord and the Shangchuan Domain Lord. He immediately frowned, and a cold killing intent flashed across his eyes. But this was not the end, Long Zai Tian continued. Other than the four of us, I have also set up the 5 Absolute Sky Array. With this spirit-level array, combined with my 10,000 Gu altar, it is enough to kill 7th or 8th level spirit refinement realm experts. Chapter 11:16. Without a doubt, Long Zai Tian was determined to kill Ji Tianqing tonight. He understood Ji Tianqing's nature very well. After careful planning, he finally set up this death trap. He was a young genius in the spirit refinement realm. Adding on the ferocious and powerful puppet, it was enough to give Ji Tianqing a headache. He did not expect that he would pull the Shangchuan Domain Lord and the 100 Stream Domain Lord into his ship to deal with Ji Tianqing. More importantly, the 5 ultimate sky formation that sealed the entire secret room was a spirit-level high-grade array. This array combined with 1,000 Gu altar had terrifying power, enough to kill a 7th or 8th level spirit refinement realm expert. No matter how one looked at it, Ji Tianqing had no chance of surviving or escaping. He was dead for sure. Ji Tianqing's face was gloomy and his eyes were cold as ice. He stared at Long Zai Tian and said in a deep voice, Long Zai Tian, your sinister and despicable nature has indeed exceeded my expectations. However, you mustered such a large force and pulled in 2 domain lords to deal with me. Have you ever thought that if your plan failed and this matter was leaked out, you would be completely finished? Long Zai Tian nodded slightly and sneered, That's right, I did take a huge risk. If I did not succeed, my reputation would be ruined. However, you are too difficult to deal with. You are the strongest enemy in my life. In order to get rid of you as soon as possible, I can disregard everything and bet everything on it. The facts have proven that I succeeded. The trap I set up is a death trap. No matter what, you will die for sure. I really can't think of any chance of you surviving. As long as you die, I can rest easy and the news will not be leaked out. I am still the honorable third prince. Not long after, I will defeat Long Yun Shao and seize the throne of the Son of Heaven. In the end, I will become the emperor of the human race. After thousands of years, the world will only remember my great achievements. Who will remember a loser like you? History and justice have always been written by the winner. The loser has no right to speak. Ha 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 ha. Long Zai Tian's attitude was as if victory was in his grasp. He was arrogant to the extreme. The 2 area leaders also revealed cold smiles. Their eyes were full of anticipation, and they were in high spirits. They are Long Zai Tian's loyal dogs. Tonight, they will eradicate Ji Tianqing. Not only will they be able to vent their anger, they will also be able to make the greatest contribution. In the future, when Long Zai Tian succeeds the position of Son of Heaven and Monarch, they will be the greatest contributors and will definitely be put in an important position. Thinking of this, the 2 of them were filled with excitement and longing, their blood boiling. Ji Tianqing silently accumulated his strength, and his entire body surged with sword intent that soared into the sky as he secretly resisted the suppressive force of the 5 extreme sky force formation. Very good. Long Zai Tian, it seems like you want to stake everything on this one throw. Then I can only fight with my back to the river, and thoroughly end this grudge with you. As he spoke, a black light flashed in his right palm, and a black broken sword appeared. Long Zai Tian retracted his cold smile. His entire body emitted a cold killing intent as he ordered in a deep voice. Attack together, we must kill him as fast as possible. Following his order, the celestial puppet flew up from the altar and pounced towards Ji Tianqing from above. The 100 Flow Territory Lord and the Shangchuan Territory Lord also took out their treasured swords, and used their peerless sword techniques to attack Ji Tianqing. Swoosh swoosh swoosh. In a split second, dozens of cold sword lights and bloody blades slashed down from the sky, enveloping Ji Tianqing's figure. Ji Tianqing did not panic in the face of danger. Golden light flickered on his back, and a pair of golden wings condensed. He raised his magma-like left arm and slammed his palm towards the celestial puppet, while his right hand slashed out a sword light that could split heaven and earth, and attacked the two territory lords. Burning Sky Palm. Metal Emperor Slash. The huge flaming palm that blotted out the sky instantly shattered the bloody blades released by the celestial puppet, and hit him with a bang. With a bang, the celestial puppet was sent flying by the burning sky palm, and crashed heavily onto the 10,000 gu altar. Although his body was formed by the heaven-swallowing beast, and his defense and strength were very strong, he was still unable to withstand the burning sky palm. However, he was still unable to withstand the might of the burning heaven palm. Cracks actually appeared all over his body from the impact, and his flesh and blood were all burnt into charcoal. The golden sword light from the broken sword was hundreds of meters long, and it exploded with an unstoppable force. Kaboom! The huge sword instantly broke through dozens of sword lights, and hit the Shangchuan territory lord with a dull cracking sound. The Shangchuan territory lord, who was at the 3rd level of the soul cultivation realm, could not withstand Ji Tianqing's attack. His protective Dharma power and armor were shattered on the spot, and he was sent flying with blood spurting out of his mouth, and fell below the altar. Then, the 100-flow territory lord wielded his treasured sword and slashed at Ji Tianqing. But when the sword light came down on him, he did not hesitate to close his wings and protect himself. Boom! A deafening explosion burst out, and the sky was filled with golden light and white divine soul light, bursting out in all directions in the secret chamber. Ji Tianqing stood where he was and was only pushed back 10 steps. He was not injured at all. However, the 100-flow territory lord was pushed back 100 steps before he could regain his balance. He was shocked and could not believe it. He roared and pounced at Ji Tianqing again, holding the sword with both hands. Earth-shattering slash. The 100-flow territory lord unleashed all his power and used his most powerful attack, slashing out a 100-meter-long giant sword. The power of the giant sword was enough to split 100 miles and turn the earth into a deep abyss. Ji Tianqing frowned slightly. His eyes flickered as he used the 9 heaven-burying swords without hesitation. Sword draw form. He immediately drew out the sword and poured his powerful divine soul energy into the broken sword, and slashed at the 100-flow territory lord with all his might. An earth-shattering sword light slashed out and met the 100-meter-long giant sword. Bang! In an instant, the 100-meter-long giant sword was broken and shattered into pieces. The 100-flow territory lord could not dodge in time and was cut in half by the sword light. His body split apart from the middle, turning into 2 halves. Dark red blood mixed together as they fell from the sky. A dignified domain lord, a powerhouse at the 3rd level of the soul refinement realm, was actually killed by Ji Tianqing in a single strike. Even his divine soul was split into 2 by the sword. It shattered on the spot and was completely obliterated. After all, Ji Tianqing's earth-shattering sword contained terrifying divine soul energy. Both the celestial capital puppet and the Shangchuan territorial lord were dumbfounded at the sight of this. Their eyes widened in horror. They could not believe that Ji Tianqing's strength had actually reached such an extent. This was insane. While the 2 of them were in a daze, Ji Tianqing swung his sword again and stabbed at the heavenly capital puppet. Sword thrust form. A cold star lit up the sky. As the broken sword stabbed, an extremely condensed cold light appeared and disappeared into thin air. It crossed a few hundred meters and pierced the heavenly capital puppet's chest. Although the cold light was only the size of a fist. However, when it struck the celestial puppet, it suddenly erupted with a power that could destroy the heavens and earth. Boom! Chapter 11:17. The celestial puppet's body was transformed from a gigantic heaven-devouring beast. It was transformed from its original body, and its defense and strength were extremely strong. No one expected that it would be destroyed by Ji Tianqing's sword and turned into a bloody pulp. Not only that, but the power of the explosion created a huge crater in the secret chamber's ground. The entire secret chamber shook violently, and more than 10 trenches that were more than 10 miles long appeared in the ground. The earth-shattering commotion caused the entire hidden dragon palace and even the entire flying dragon palace to tremble. It was simply too terrifying. The Shangchuan territorial lord and Long Zhaitian were both stunned, and their eyes were filled with fear. However, Long Zhaitian did not participate in the battle from the beginning, as he was busy controlling the 10,000 gu altar. His plan was to let the celestial puppet and the 2 territorial lords stall Ji Tianqing, and it would be best if they could injure Ji Tianqing. Then, he would control the 10,000 gu altar's power and kill Ji Tianqing on the spot. This was originally a foolproof plan that would go smoothly. However, no matter how much Long Zetian calculated, he did not expect Ji Tianqing's true strength to reach such a terrifying level. The celestial puppet and the two territorial lords were instantly killed after exchanging a few blows with him. Seeing this scene, Long Zetian was so angry that his eyes almost popped out of their sockets. His heart was filled with anxiety and anger. However, he could not give up halfway. He desperately used his dermic powers to control the 10,000 Gu altar and accumulate terrifying power. Whoosh! At this moment, after Ji Tianqing killed the celestial puppet, he did not hesitate to kill the Shangchuan territorial lord. Die! He roared with murderous intent and slashed out 100-meter-long divine soul sword light with his broken sword. The dazzling white sword instantly struck the Shangchuan territorial lord. The pitiful Shangchuan territorial lord had not recovered from his shock and wanted to dodge, but it was already too late. Bam! Another loud, muffled sound rang out. The enormous divine soul sword light split the Shangchuan territorial lord in half. Even his divine soul could not escape and was directly cut into pieces by the giant sword. The Shangchuan territorial lord followed in the footsteps of the 100 domain lords and was killed on the spot. The raging energy and dazzling sword light filled the secret chamber within a radius of 1,000 meters, causing chaos in the secret chamber. In the blink of an eye, only Ji Tianqing and Long Zetian were left in the secret chamber. Of course, the heavenly capital puppet's fleshly body was destroyed, but its divine soul still survived. When it saw Ji Tianqing carrying the broken sword and rushing towards Long Zetian at lightning speed, it was immediately filled with anxiety. No! I can't let you destroy my lord's plan. The celestial puppet's divine soul let out a roar. Its two soul Dharma eyes charged towards Ji Tianqing fearlessly, carrying the power of its soul Dharma eyes. His two Dharma eyes unleashed thousands of divine soul white light beams, intending to fight Ji Tianqing to the death. Swish! Swish! Thousands of white light blades fell from the sky like a rain of arrows, enveloping Ji Tianqing's figure. In order to stop Ji Tianqing, the celestial puppet no longer cared about the consequences. This supreme technique had exhausted all of its spiritual energy. Therefore, the power of this ultimate technique was also unimaginably strong. No matter how strong Ji Tianqing was, he didn't dare to ignore the bombardment of divine soul light blades. Wings of the Golden Rock. He suddenly let out a low growl and closed the golden wings on his shoulders to protect himself. In the next moment, an overwhelming amount of white light blades came crashing down, hitting the golden wings one after another. Bang 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 bang. Amidst a series of muffled sounds, the pair of golden wings trembled from the impact of the white blades. Ji Tianqing couldn't stop himself from retreating. He was forced back several hundred steps, all the way to the edge of the secret chamber. Only when his back was against the edge of the five extremes array did he stop. Although the golden wings blocked the attack of thousands of divine soul light blades, leaving him unscathed. But the power of the golden wings was almost exhausted, and the light became much dimmer. After the divine light blades dissipated, Ji Tianqing spread out his golden wings and looked up at the two divine soul eyes in the air. Evil creature, your time of death has come. He let out a low growl and waved the broken sword in his right hand, slashing out two divine soul sword lights with all his strength. Bang bang! Two blazing white giant swords 10 feet long slashed the two divine soul eyes, causing two loud muffled sounds. The celestial puppet's two divine soul eyes were shattered on the spot, turning into white light fragments that scattered in all directions. In the moment before its death, a final thought flashed through its divine soul. Lord, I've done my best. You must succeed. As dozens of white light fragments fell from the sky, the celestial puppet was completely destroyed. The two territorial lords and the celestial puppet were dead, and now only Ji Tianqing and Long Zetian were left. Ji Tianqing's body was filled with killing intent, and he turned to look at the top of the altar, looking for traces of Long Zetian. However, at this moment, an angry and resentful roar came from the 10,000 Gu altar. 10,000 Gu holy technique, devour the heavens and earth. As Long Zetian roared, the power of the 10,000 Gu altar and the five ultimate sky formations suddenly burst out to the extreme. The 100-meter-tall five-colored altar lit up with a five-colored rainbow light that enveloped heaven and earth, releasing an incomparably terrifying power that enveloped Ji Tianqing. His expression changed, and he immediately retreated. Swoosh! But the five-colored rainbow light that blotted out the sky was unimaginably fast, and it instantly enveloped him. He was drowned in the five-colored rainbow light, and his whole body was wrapped in a mysterious and vast power. His body stiffened on the spot, and he was completely unable to move. Withdraw! Long Xiqian's angry roar came from the altar again. Immediately, the 10,000 Gu altar released an incomparably terrifying devouring power that enveloped Ji Tianqing and flew him into the altar. The five-colored rainbow light that filled the entire secret room condensed into a huge ball of light that enveloped him like a cocoon. He had a bad premonition, and he desperately erupted with strength to struggle. However, the cocoon formed by the five-colored rainbow light was extremely tough. Even if he swung his broken sword and cut open a crack in the cocoon would immediately heal and suppress him even more violently. Finally, he was enveloped by the five-colored rainbow light and flew into the 10,000 Gu altar. Swoosh! The 10,000 Gu altar swallowed him, and he was suppressed inside the altar, in a mysterious space filled with five-colored rainbow light. This was the inner space of the 10,000 Gu altar, and it was isolated from the outside world. Unless Ji Tianqing could break the 10,000 Gu altar, there was no way he could escape. The five-colored rainbow light enveloped him, and no matter how he struggled, he could not break free. There was no way he could escape from the 10,000 Gu altar, only death awaited him. Moreover, the five-colored rainbow light was a powerful Gu Dao divine power, and it was constantly corroding his body, devouring his magic power and soul power. Inside the five-colored light ball, his strength was rapidly being devoured, and his struggle became weaker and weaker. Soon, he was completely suppressed by the 10,000 Gu altar. At this time, Long Xiqian's figure appeared, and he stood at the top of the altar with a pale face, panting heavily. Chapter 11:18. Long Xiqian adjusted his breathing for a while before gradually calming down. He stood at the top of the altar and looked down at the myriad Gu altar. His divine soul could see the five-colored space inside the altar. Seeing Ji Tianqing trapped in the five-colored space and suppressed by the altar, becoming extremely weak, he immediately raised his head and laughed loudly. Ha 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 ha! Ji Tianqing, you little bastard, to think that you would have such a day? What number one genius, what once-in-a-lifetime monstrous genius! You are nothing in front of me. Aren't you arrogant? You colluded with Long Yunshao to go against me. What qualifications do you have to be my enemy now? I spent so much effort to plan this sure-kill situation. It is to completely eliminate you. Since you cannot be used by me, I will make you disappear forever. Long Xiqian was in a very good mood. He laughed proudly, his eyes surging with an ominous light. With the help of the Five Extremes formation and the Myriad Gu origin, he successfully suppressed Ji Tianqing. His scheme and goal were finally achieved. As for the deaths of the two domain lords and the capital of heaven puppet, he did not care at all. As long as he could achieve his goal of completely eliminating Ji Tianqing, he would not hesitate to pay any price. Within the five-colored space of the myriad Gu altar, Ji Tianqing heard Long Xiqian's wild laughter. But he remained silent, silently resisting the corrosion of the Gu path divine power, thinking of a way to escape. Long Xiqian's laughter gradually stopped, he said proudly. Ji Tianqing, I will tell you the truth. None of the experts suppressed in the myriad Gu altar can escape alive. In these 10 years, the number of heaven origin and soul refinement experts suppressed by me using the myriad Gu altar exceeded 100. Among them, there were more than a dozen soul refinement experts. They are all the same as you, going against me, swearing to die and refusing to be loyal to me. Thus, they were all refined by me using the myriad Gu altar, turning into a pool of blood. Their life's cultivation was devoured by the myriad Gu altar. Because of this, my enemies are constantly decreasing. They are either dead or surrendered. The power of the myriad Gu altar is also constantly increasing. No one can stop it. Humph, no matter how strong you are, you will be reduced to nothing in 6 hours and become the nourishment of the myriad Gu altar. Speaking of this, he grinned sinisterly and said in a mocking tone, You are the number one genius of the human race. Your cultivation is profound and your talent is superb. After being devoured by the myriad Gu altar, the power of my altar will definitely increase exponentially. Its power will become even stronger. This is your destiny, and this is also the result of making an enemy out of me. Tonight, you can die in peace. It won't be long before I kill Long Yunshao and bury him with you. Ha ha. After saying that, Long Xiqian let out a few wild laughs, leaped off the altar, and flew towards the door of the secret room. 6 hours later, Ji Tianqing would definitely turn into a pool of blood. Not even his bones would be left. There was no doubt about it. Long Zitian could not wait in the secret room for 6 hours. By then, the sky would be bright. He still had to return to the Flying Dragon Palace and appease the guests. After all, the commotion caused by the battle earlier was too great. It had already alarmed the entire Flying Dragon Palace. The hundreds and thousands of guests must have been startled awake. They might even make wild guesses and spread some rumors. Long Zitian had to personally resolve this matter, to prevent the guests from causing a commotion or spreading false rumors. He had great ambitions. He wanted to fight for the throne of the emperor in the future, and succeed the throne of the emperor. He cared about his reputation and achievements the most. He would not allow others to criticize him and affect him negatively. Swoosh! He flew out of the secret room as fast as lightning, and soon returned to the main hall of the Hidden Dragon Palace. The main hall was as dark as ink. It was silent. However, it was noisy outside the Hidden Dragon Palace. There were constant noises and the shouts of the guards. Long Zitian quickly rushed to the main hall and opened the door. The moment he opened the door, he saw over 100 armored guards with swords gathered outside the Hidden Dragon Palace's main door. Many guards surrounded the main hall's main door. The 3 guard commanders were gathered together to discuss something. Their expressions were very serious. In the surrounding courtyards, there were hundreds of guests gathered. They were all gathered in groups of 3 to 5, whispering to each other about something. Obviously, things were just as Long Zitian expected. The commotion from the battle earlier had awakened the guests in the palace. Countless guests got up in the middle of the night. They were all discussing this matter, and rushed to the Hidden Dragon Palace to see what was going on. None of these guests were mediocre. They were all powerful martial artists. Most of them were Sky Origin realm experts. Everyone could sense that the earth-shaking commotion came from beneath the Hidden Dragon Palace. Luckily, the Flying Dragon Palace's guards had rushed over immediately. They surrounded the main door of the Hidden Dragon Palace, blocking the guests outside. Otherwise, the guests who came to watch the show might very well charge into the Hidden Dragon Palace. Long Zitian saw that the situation outside the palace was a little chaotic, but it was not out of control yet. He immediately let out a breath of relief. He quickly walked out of the main hall, stood under the eaves of the main door, and appeared in front of the crowd. When the guards and guests saw him appear, they all knelt down to greet him. Greetings to the third prince. Long Zitian calmly scanned the crowd. He said in a dignified and calm voice, "Everyone, please rise. It is so late at night. Why are you all not resting in your rooms, but gathered here and making such a ruckus?" He asked even though he already knew the answer. His dignified eyes scanned the crowd. The guests and the 3 bodyguard commanders hurriedly tried to explain. "Third prince, we all heard a loud noise coming from under the ground. What happened?" "Your Highness, are you all right? Did something happen?" Long Zitian waved his sleeves and explained with a light smile. "I see. No wonder everyone rushed here and is talking about it. Just now when I was cultivating in the secret underground room, I had a feeling and comprehended a powerful secret skill, so I couldn't help but test its power. I never thought that the secret skill's power would be so strong that it would cause such a huge commotion and disturb everyone's rest. I am deeply sorry." Hearing Long Zitian's explanation, the crowd finally understood. They all nodded their heads in praise and flattery. Third Prince is indeed a martial arts genius. To be able to comprehend martial arts and master a secret skill at his birthday banquet. Third Prince's strength is indeed extraordinary. To be able to cause such a commotion, that secret skill must be profound and unfathomable. Haha, tonight's matter was actually a mistake, but the Third Prince's secret skill has reached great success. If this matter spreads out, it will be an interesting story. The guests discussed for a while, their laughter never ending. Long Zitian humbly said a few words, then sent the crowd away. Chapter 11-19. Hidden Dragon Palace became quiet. All the guests had left, only the guards were left. The secret room deep underground also fell into darkness and silence. The 10,000 gu altar was still emitting 5-colored light, but it was not dazzling. It was much more low profile, as if it was sleeping. This was because Ji Tianqing, who was suppressed inside the altar, had temporarily stopped resisting. When he was suppressed by the 10,000 gu altar, he was filled with anger and anxiety. He wanted to tear Long Zitian into pieces. He only wanted to escape the altar. But now, he calmed down. He was no longer anxious and panicked. He calmly thought of a solution. The mysterious five-colored light was condensed from the power of the 10,000 gu origin. It had the power to corrode his body and soul. Just as Long Zai Tian said, he was suppressed by the 10,000 gu altar. In 6 hours, his body and soul would be devoured. He would turn into nothingness. He would become boundless energy, increasing the 10,000 gu altar's power. However, after he calmed down, he immediately thought of a way to resist the 10,000 gu altar. He entered the sword world and hid in the peaceful soil city. In the five-colored space, only a broken sword was left floating in the air, corroded by the endless five-colored light. The broken sword was a top-grade soul artifact. Its material and defense were comparable to a divine artifact. Even though the 10,000 gu altar was a gu path divine artifact, it could not corrode the broken sword in a short time, let alone injure Ji Tianqing. Ji Tianqing estimated that the broken sword could last for at least 3 days without being damaged. In these 3 days, he would be safe. It was just that Burial of Heaven expended a lot of energy. He stayed in peaceful Soil City. As he consumed pills to heal his wounds, he communicated with Buried Heaven through voice transmission to discuss countermeasures. Burial of Heaven, although I hid in the sword world, I will not be in danger for at least 3 days. But this cannot go on. We cannot sit here and wait for death. We need to think of a way to escape the altar. Burial of Heaven said in a low voice. Of course. Long Zai Tian is busy taking charge of the situation in front of Heaven's eye, to prevent the news from leaking and arousing suspicion among the guests. But after 6 hours, he will definitely return to check if you have been killed by the 10,000 gu altar. Thus, you only have 6 hours. Ji Tianqing thought for a moment. He probed. How about I ask the Golden Mountain King to gather the warriors of the Earth Spirit race? We can work together and use the formation to inject energy into you. Then you'll break through the altar's suppression and seal, and take us out of here. Of Heaven's Path divine artifact, we can't break through the altar suppression. We are inside the altar. We can't break through the altar's divine gu path divine artifact. We can't break through the altar. Divine artifact divine artifact divine path divine 1,000 gu divine artifact divine artifact. If we divine 1,000 gu altar, even if we can neutralize the gu path divine power, we won't be able to destroy the sacrificial altar. Are we going to be trapped here forever? Burial of Heaven thought for a moment, then said in a low and vigorous voice. If you want to escape, you have to use some special methods. You can't just think about destroying the altar. In a head-on collision, the material of the broken sword was slightly inferior to the altar, so it would be difficult to destroy it with brute force. Maybe you can do the opposite and try to control the myriad gu altar. Ji Tianqing frowned. He didn't know whether to laugh or cry. What? Control the myriad gu altar? The Burial of Heaven? Aren't you being too whimsical? The myriad gu altar is Long Zai Tian's strongest trump card, a natal divine artifact cultivated by his soul. How can I control it? How do you know if you don't try? Burial of Heaven said solemnly in a deep voice. You are the #1 genius of the Central Prefecture. You have so many trump cards, and you have my help. In front of us, nothing is impossible. You've already created so many miracles. Can't you even handle a broken altar? Ji Tianqing nodded repeatedly and said with a light smile. All right. Thank you for your praise. Since you have so much confidence in me, then I'll give it my all. Anyway, we're trapped here, and there's no hope of escaping. I'll burn my boats and fight with my back to the river. After saying that, he flew out of the sword world and returned to the five-colored space. Swoosh! The moment he appeared, endless multicolored light surged over and wrapped around him, turning him into a multicolored cocoon. The mysterious and bizarre Gu Dao divine power crazily corroded his body and soul, devouring his flesh and soul. However, he calmly stretched out his right palm and activated the heaven-mending orb in his mind, releasing a dense and mysterious white light. Heaven-mending orb, ever since I got you, I still can't figure out what kind of treasure you are. But you allowed me to create countless miracles, devouring and purifying all kinds of power. This time, I hope you can still create miracles and don't disappoint me. He murmured in his heart as he stared at the center of his right palm. He stared at the mysterious white light and observed the changes in the light. Soon, he clearly saw that the mysterious white light spread out. Once it came into contact with the five-colored light, the five-colored light immediately disappeared. The 5-colored light surged from all directions and condensed into 5-colored water streams. They flowed into his palm along the mysterious white light, and then flowed into the heaven-mending orb in his mind. Seeing this scene, his spirit was immediately shaken, and his eyes shone with a strong light of surprise. "This is great! The heaven-mending orb really didn't disappoint me. It can actually devour Gu Dao divine power. The miraculous heaven-mending orb is indeed an omnipotent divine item." His heart was filled with joy and excitement, and he was also full of hope and expectation towards the burial of heaven's suggestion. Since the heaven-mending orb could devour Gu Dao divine power, then he had a high chance of turning the tables and seizing control of the 10,000 Gu altar for himself. The 10,000 Gu altar was Long Zai Tian's greatest trump card, and also his secret weapon to control the 2 aristocratic families, as well as many forces and experts. Once Ji Tianqing seized the 10,000 Gu altar, it was equivalent to severing Long Zai Tian's lifeblood and taking his life. At that time, Long Zai Tian would lose everything and suffer a crushing defeat. Ji Tianqing felt excited just thinking about it, and his heart surged. But this was only his fantasy. The most important thing now was to use the heaven-mending orb to remove the Gu Dao divine power as soon as possible. He calmed his emotions and activated the heaven-mending orb with all his strength. His palms released dense white light, and crazily devoured the 5-colored light. As time passed, the endless rainbow light was devoured by the heaven-mending orb. The Gu Dao divine power in the 5-colored space became thinner and thinner, and its power was also weakening. In just a short hour, the 5-colored light in the entire space was reduced by half. 2 hours passed, and the rainbow light in the 5-colored space was completely devoured, disappearing without a trace. Then, something even stranger happened. The Gu Dao divine power that was devoured by the heaven-mending orb was actually purified by the heaven-mending orb. The evil power within was removed, and it became even purer. Chapter 11:20. Ji Tianqing tried a few times, manipulating the Gu Dao divine power in the heaven-mending pearl. He could indeed release a 5-colored brilliance. However, he had yet to figure out the use of the purified Gu Dao divine power that he could control. He ignored the Gu Dao divine power for now. He opened his pure heart Dharma eye and used his divine soul power to investigate the internal structure of the myriad Gu altar. If he wanted to seize control of the myriad Gu altar, he had to first figure out the structure of the altar, then find the formation nodes. Most importantly, Long Zai Tian had fused with the myriad Gu altar, leaving behind a deep divine soul imprint. He had to get rid of those divine soul imprints to seize control. Time passed by quietly. Unknowingly, another hour had passed. Ji Tianqing used his divine soul power to figure out a portion of the myriad Gu altar's internal structure. Unfortunately, this was only a small portion, far less than 1/10 of the entire altar. This myriad Gu altar was a Gu Dao divine artifact from the olden antiquity era. It was very mysterious and had an extremely complex structure. Even if he studied it for a month, he might not be able to figure out all the formation nodes of the myriad Gu altar. Damn it, I only have 2 hours left. It is not enough time. I have no hope of seizing the myriad Gu altar. He was very anxious, but could not think of a better idea. At this time, Burial of Heaven's voice resounded in his mind, reminding him, "Tianqing, since there is not enough time, you might as well stop observing the structure of the altar. The heaven-mending pearl helped you purify the Gu Dao divine power. You can use it as you wish without any side effects, nor will it harm you. You can try releasing the Gu Dao divine power and inject it into the myriad Gu altar. You can use the Gu Dao divine power to find the crucial formation of the altar, as well as Long Zai Tian's divine soul imprint." Ji Tianqing's mind shook, his eyes flashed with a trace of brilliance. He suddenly realized, that's right. Why didn't I think of this? Burial of Heaven, thank you for your reminder. You have really helped me greatly. Without further ado, he did not waste any time. He quickly released pure Gu Dao divine power and injected it into the myriad Gu altar. Shwa! Dazzling multicolored light shot out from his palms and immediately spread out in all directions, splitting into thousands of multicolored light pillars that drilled into the surrounding darkness. Those finger-thick 5-colored light pillars flowed through the myriad Gu altar's internal meridians like water flowing through every orifice. Soon, many colorful grids appeared in the dark space around Ji Tianqing. Those grids were made up of dense multicolored lines that outlined the structure of the altar's formation. As time passed, endless Gu Dao divine power gushed out of the heaven-mending pearl. The five-colored meridian diagram around Ji Tianqing continued to expand and extend, becoming infinitely large, intricate, and complex. In the past, the veins of these formations were hidden. If he wanted to identify them, he would have to spend a lot of time and effort. But now, the internal structure and veins of the altar were outlined by the five-colored light into a huge pattern. This pattern was like a pyramid. The bottom was wide, and the top was gradually narrowing, becoming narrower and narrower. Ji Tianqing could clearly see the structure of the altar. He could see the thousands of formation patterns and combinations. Right now, the myriad Gu altar no longer had any disguise or concealment. It was clearly presented in front of him. As expected of a Gu Dao divine artifact from the olden antiquity era, it is so mysterious and complex. If not for an essence spirit realm supreme expert, who could refine such an intricate divine artifact? No wonder Long Zai Tian relied on this treasure to rise rapidly and his strength soared rapidly. No wonder he could create all kinds of divine talismans and control so many heaven origin and soul refinement realm experts to become his lackeys. Ji Tianqing looked up at this 100-meter-tall pyramid-shaped structure made up of billions of multicolored lines and praised from the bottom of his heart. His eyes flickered with excitement, he smiled with gratification. I already know all the secrets of the myriad Gu altar. The core formation that controls the altar, and Long Zai Tian's soul imprint, I have found them all. Next, I will cast a spell to seize control of the altar and erase his soul imprint. From today onwards, this Gu Dao divine artifact will belong to me. He murmured confidently, his tone full of pride and dominance. With that, he flew into the dark sky above, cast a spell to break the spatial obstruction, and continued to climb upwards. He followed the dense multicolored veins and flew continuously inside the altar, casting spells to break one formation after another. Inside the myriad Gu altar, there were thousands of formations of various sizes, intertwined and overlapped, affecting and amplifying each other. There were a total of 18 core formations. They were the key to controlling the myriad Gu altar. Long Zai Tian had left his soul imprint in these 18 great formations. Ji Tianqing did not want to alarm Long Zai Tian too early, so he first started to break the 18 great formations, and then erase his soul imprint. He was fully focused on breaking the formation. He used all of his abilities to break the formation. Burial of Heaven also assisted him, constantly injecting energy into him, or providing suggestions to break the formations. Ji Tianqing was so busy with the great formations that he was completely immersed in it. He even forgot about the passage of time. Unknowingly, 2 hours passed. He finally broke all 18 great formations, and was able to control pure Gu Dao divine power, controlling the operation of the 18 great formations. Right now, the myriad Gu altar was jointly controlled by him and Long Zai Tian. He raised his sleeve to wipe the sweat on his forehead, muttering with a solemn expression, "One more hour, just one more step, and I will be able to completely control the myriad Gu altar." As he spoke, he released his vigorous soul energy, and started to erase Long Zai Tian's soul imprint. It was already dawn, the sky was about to brighten. In the Flying Dragon Palace's guest hall and plaza, there were still some guests who were drunk all night, and were still drinking. Long Zai Tian had just comforted the guests who were startled awake, and explained the reason to them. Most of the guests had returned to their rooms to rest, but a few influential city lords and wealthy family heads took the opportunity to get close to him. These city lords and family heads all had different intentions. They wanted to discuss cooperation with him, or to become his subordinates. There were too many people during the day and the banquet. It was not suitable to discuss such confidential matters. Now that everyone was asleep, they could discuss this matter in the study room. Long Zai Tian was talking with assurance, laughing and joking with everyone. Suddenly, he felt a piercing pain in his soul, and his body could not help but tremble twice. Everyone saw his strange expression, and showed a concerned expression. They all asked him what was wrong, if he was feeling unwell. But he remained silent, frowning with a gloomy expression. He released his soul energy to sense for a moment, and his expression changed greatly. Bastard! He actually dares! His eyes flashed with a cold light, and he cursed angrily. Ignoring the city lords and family heads, he flew out of the study room, and rushed to the hidden dragon palace at lightning speed. Seeing him leave suddenly, everyone was puzzled and worried. They looked at each other. They were full of doubts, and wanted to ask Long Zai Tian what happened. But they did not have the guts, nor the qualifications to ask. Long Zai Tian's speed was extremely fast, and he returned to the hidden dragon palace in the blink of an eye. He ignored the guards at the entrance of the main hall, and rushed into the main hall. He quickly opened the secret room's entrance in the corner, and went into the secret room's passage. Chapter 11:21. The 1,000-meter-wide secret room was still enveloped by the 5 ultimate formation. The secret room was dimly lit, and there were traces of a huge battle on the ground. However, the 100-meter-tall multicolored altar had already disappeared without a trace. Long Zai Tian looked at the empty secret room, completely dumbfounded. His body stiffened on the spot, his eyes opened wide as he stared at the empty space. After a while, when he came back to his senses, he was so angry that his body was trembling, and he roared furiously, "Ji Tianxing! You bastard who deserves to be hacked to death! You actually stole my 10,000 gu altar. How is this possible?" He originally thought that with the 5 ultimate formation and the 10,000 gu altar, they would be able to unleash terrifying power. Ji Tianxing was suppressed in the 10,000 gu altar, and only death awaited him. There was no way he could escape. But now, 6 hours had passed, and not only was Ji Tianxing not dead, he even stole the 10,000 gu altar. Long Zai Tian could never have imagined such a shocking turn of events. He cursed furiously, and immediately used a secret technique, using his divine soul power to sense the 10,000 gu altar's aura, and to find its location. However, he made hand seals with both hands, and used the secret technique 3 times in a row, but he still could not sense the 10,000 gu altar's aura. As for the 10,000 gu altar's location, he could not sense it at all. His divine soul connection with the 10,000 gu altar was completely cut off. Ah! Ji Tianxing! You despicable beast! You actually erased my divine soul imprint! Long Zai Tian was so angry that he went crazy, and he roared hysterically, his eyes turning blood red. The 10,000 gu altar was his greatest secret and trump card, and it was more important than his life. Now that he could not kill Ji Tianxing, and instead let Ji Tianxing steal the 10,000 gu altar, he had truly suffered a double loss. Moreover, Ji Tianxing knew the secret of the 10,000 gu altar and the divine gu. The altar had fallen into Ji Tianxing's hands. He would definitely use the myriad gu altar to create an even bigger commotion. Long Zai Tian had a premonition that an even bigger storm was about to come. He would fall into a hopeless situation where he would be alone and without help. When he thought of this, he was so angry that he almost vomited blood. He clenched his teeth so hard that they almost broke. However, he knew that it had already happened. No matter how angry he was, it would be useless. The urgent matter now was to find a way to catch up to Ji Tianxing and take back the myriad gu altar. He just erased my divine soul imprint. He definitely hasn't run far yet. Long Zai Tian calmed down and muttered with a gloomy face. He quickly turned around and left the secret room. When he returned to the hidden dragon palace, the sky was already bright. A new day had arrived, but the atmosphere in the flying dragon palace was extremely tense. Long Zai Tian immediately gathered all the imperial bodyguard captains and commanders, and gave them an order to lead all the imperial bodyguards to search. Other than that, he also mobilized tens of thousands of Flying Dragon City city guards, as well as the elite experts of a dozen forces, to search inside and outside the Flying Dragon City. He gave a death order. Even if they had to dig 3 feet into the ground, they had to find Ji Tianxing and take back the myriad gu altar. When his order was passed down, the entire Flying Dragon City was bustling with noise and excitement. More than 30,000 city guards were divided into more than 300 teams of 100 people, and they searched the surrounding 10,000 miles of Flying Dragon City. More than 500 elite experts from more than a dozen forces were also divided into dozens of small teams, and they carried out a carpet search in the city. The entire Flying Dragon City had entered a state of martial law. All the city gates and important roads were heavily guarded. Early in the morning, Flying Dragon City was in chaos. The atmosphere was extremely tense, and the situation was very grim. When the citizens in the city saw such a scene, they were all shocked and puzzled. They all discussed and asked about what had happened. When the thousands of guests in the Flying Dragon Palace woke up, they also found that the atmosphere in the palace was tense and stifling. Everyone was puzzled. What had happened? Many people guessed that the loud sound they heard last night was not caused by the third prince's cultivation, but because something had really happened. Countless guests had a premonition that something big must have happened in the Flying Dragon Palace, which was why the third prince was so furious. Everyone was afraid of getting into trouble, so they all bid farewell and left the Flying Dragon Palace as soon as possible. However, the third prince closed the door and did not see anyone, nor did he allow the guests to leave. Not only did the Flying Dragon Palace activate the defensive formation, they also sent out countless guards to guard the entrance and the various exits. Over 1,000 guests were trapped in the Flying Dragon Palace, unable to leave for the time being. This caused everyone to be even more puzzled, and they felt that the situation was serious. Everyone discussed animatedly, secretly guessing and analyzing, and many rumors spread. In short, the entire Flying Dragon Palace and even the entire Flying Dragon City fell into a state of tension and chaos. Everyone in the city was searching for Ji Tianqing, searching for his tracks and whereabouts. But no one knew that he had not left the Flying Dragon City at all, and was even in the Flying Dragon Palace. When he removed Long Zai Tian's divine soul imprint, Long Zai Tian immediately sensed it, and his divine soul felt a piercing pain. He sensed that something was wrong, so he immediately rushed back to the hidden Dragon Palace and entered the secret room to check on the situation. At that time, Ji Tianqing had just removed his divine soul imprint, shrunk the 100-meter-tall 10,000 gu altar to the size of a palm, and kept it in the sword world. The secret room was protected by the 5 ultimate heavenly formation, and its defense was extremely strong. Ji Tianqing did not have time to break the formation, and Long Zai Tian had already arrived. At the critical moment, he could only hide underground in the secret room, trying his best to restrain his aura and hide. Even though he had already seized the 10,000 gu altar, and with his strength, he could defeat Long Zai Tian. But this was not his ultimate goal. Furthermore, it was too dangerous to fight Long Zai Tian head-on. Flying Dragon City was Long Zai Tian's territory, and there were tens of thousands of experts in the city, as well as hundreds of martial arts experts. If he was discovered by Long Zai Tian, he would definitely be besieged by the experts in the city. After the matter blew up, he would not be able to distinguish between right and wrong, and his life would be in danger. Therefore, he chose to hide for the time being, avoiding Long Zai Tian's detection. After Long Zai Tian entered the secret room and discovered that the 10,000 gu altar had disappeared, he was so angry that he almost vomited blood and lost his mind. Under such circumstances, he was not rational and calm enough, so of course he did not discover Ji Tianqing. After confirming that the 10,000 gu altar had been stolen, he hurriedly left the secret room and mobilized the guards and experts to search for Ji Tianqing's traces. After he left the secret room, Ji Tianqing quietly broke the 5 ultimate heavenly formation and silently escaped from the Flying Dragon Palace. He used the Earth Escape technique and traveled 1,000 meters underground, escaping from the Flying Dragon City at a leisurely pace. Although there were tens of thousands of city guards and dozens of elite experts searching for him everywhere, no one could detect his traces. However, no one could probe 1,000 meters underground, and no one could discover his aura or traces. Chapter 11:22. At the same time, Long Zaitian finally calmed down. After careful consideration, he realized that he might have been blinded by his anger. At that time, the situation was urgent. Ji Tianqing might not have left the secret room, but was hiding in a corner of the secret room. Thinking of this, he quickly returned to the underground secret room and released his divine soul power, carefully searching every inch of land and space. However, at this moment, Ji Tianqing was already several hundred li away. He was flying high in the sky, returning to Central Continent City. The result was obvious. Long Zaitian spent an hour, turning the secret room upside down, but still could not find Ji Tianqing. He was completely enraged and went crazy, cursing and roaring crazily in the secret room, waving his fists wildly, smashing the secret room into smithereens. An hour later, he walked out of the secret room with a gloomy expression, his aura as cold as ice. After a round of crazy venting, he finally calmed down, regaining his usual wisdom and calmness. He predicted that the 10,000 gu altar would be stolen, and there would be a series of consequences. Ji Tianqing would definitely use this as a pretext to take revenge on him, killing him and ruining his reputation. Thus, after careful consideration, he began to make arrangements in advance, minimizing losses and reducing the impact of this matter on him. Some plans needed to be suspended and terminated, some things needed to be done as soon as possible. There were also some people that needed to be eliminated as soon as possible. After all, he had too many sins and flaws that needed to be covered and erased as soon as possible. When Ji Tianqing returned to Central Continent City, it was already noon. He went to Flying Dragon City this time to participate in Long Zitian's birthday celebration, which was a huge risk. But the greater the risk, the greater the reward. What he had gained was simply a huge surprise. After returning to Tianqing Palace in the monarch residence, he sat in the study room to rest, taking out the 10,000 gu altar and playing with it in his hand. I really did not expect that after so many twists and turns, it finally became the current situation. I originally thought that Long Zitian was sinister and despicable, extremely shrewd, and very difficult to deal with. I had to spend a lot of time carrying out the plan step by step, cutting off his wings bit by bit, and finally killing him. I didn't expect him to be in such a hurry to get rid of me. Instead, I seized the opportunity to take drastic measures against him. Hehe. Now that the trump card is in my hands, Long Zitian's death has arrived. He muttered to himself as he held the 10,000 gu altar in his palm, releasing dazzling 5-colored light. Long Zitian was able to control Duanmu Huang, Murong Zhang, the divine generals of the West Wilderness, the patriarchs of the Grand Clans, and those powerful city lords because of the 10,000 gu altar. Those people had been poisoned by him. If they didn't want to die, they had to listen to him. Now that the myriad gu altar is in my hands, I need to quickly refine this gu path divine artifact and gain full control over it. As such, those who have been poisoned must obey my orders, or they will die from the poison. Ji Tianqing muttered to himself. In his mind, he already had a plan to deal with Long Zitian. However, to carry out that plan, he had to refine the myriad gu altar first. After making up his mind, he summoned the housekeeper and gave him some instructions. He was about to enter a secret room to cultivate in seclusion. However, the housekeeper told him that the guards of Cloud Soul Palace had sent a letter to him yesterday evening, and the housekeeper had to hand it to him personally. He took the letter back to his room, opened the sealed envelope and took out the letter inside. There were a few lines of beautiful words written on the high-quality golden phoebe paper. It was Yun Yao's handwriting. Tianqing, I have already woken up a few days ago. My body is currently in excellent condition, and there is nothing wrong with it. Please do not worry about me. This disaster has passed, and I have also benefited from it. I have fused with the Neptunian Divine Pearl's power, and my strength has increased tenfold. I have reached Heaven Origin Stage 9th level. I wanted to return to the monarch residence immediately and share this joy with you. However, I know that you have many things to do, and you can't split yourself. Moreover, my cultivation has increased tremendously, and my martial arts foundation is unstable. I need to go into seclusion for a period of time to stabilize my cultivation. I will stay in Cloud Soul Palace to recuperate. You don't have to worry about me. Just take care of your own matters. After I finish my seclusion, I will return to the monarch residence to look for you. We will talk face to face then. After reading the contents of the letter, Ji Tianqing put it away and revealed a face full of smiles. His eyes surged with gratification and surprise. This is great. Yao Yao has finally woken up. He didn't expect that she would benefit from the disaster and reach the 9th level of the Sky Origin stage after that. This has saved her 10 years of hard cultivation. With her talent, she will be able to reach soul refining stage in a year at most. He was filled with excitement and joy for Yun Yao. After a while, he calmed down and went into the study to write 3 secret letters. He asked the housekeeper to send 2 of the letters to Cloud Soul Palace. The first letter was for Yun Yao, and the second letter was for Yun Zhongqi. In the letter, Ji Tianqing mentioned that he went to the 3rd prince's birthday banquet and took away the 10,000 gu altar. He told Yun Zhongqi about his plan and asked Yun Zhongqi to help him deal with Long Zitian. As for the 3rd letter, it was for Long Yunxiao. The contents of the letters were similar. He told Long Yunxiao about what happened and asked Long Yunxiao to help him carry out his plan. This time, he wanted to use all his strength to crush Long Zitian. He would not give him a chance to turn the tables. After the housekeeper left with the 3 letters, he went into the secret room and focused on refining the 10,000 gu altar. The structure and control of the 10,000 gu altar were extremely profound and complicated. However, he controlled the pure divine power of the Gu Dao. He could use the divine power of the Gu Dao to refine the altar and save a lot of trouble. For 5 days, he cultivated in seclusion in the secret room and refined the 10,000 gu altar. After 5 days and 5 nights of cultivation, He completely controlled the 18 core formations and left his divine soul imprint in them. From now on, his life soul was connected to the 10,000 Gu altar. The 10,000 Gu altar had truly become his magic treasure. He could use and control it as if it was his own arm. Of course, magic treasures above the soul realm all had their corresponding control techniques. He did not have the technique, so he could not use the full power of the 10,000 Gu altar. He could not use many of its effects. However, he was not in a hurry. He had plenty of chances to find the technique in the future. On the morning of the 6th day, he ended his seclusion and walked out of the secret room. When he returned to his room, a guard came to report that the Cloud Soul Palace Master and the Emperor had arrived and were waiting in the study. He smiled, and his eyes shone with anticipation. He quickly walked to the study. Chapter 11:23. In the antique study room, there was a bronze incense burner emitting smoke. The warm morning sun shone through the window into the study room, reflecting a golden color on the floor. Xueqi, who was wearing a purple robe, and Long Yunxiao, who was wearing a golden robe, were sitting at the table, talking in low voices. In all these years, the two of them had not met many times. The last time they met was at Miracle Dr. Bailey's birthday banquet. However, the two of them did not talk much. The two of them wanted to avoid arousing suspicion, so as not to embarrass Ji Tianqing and Yun Yao. After all, Ji Tianqing was the son-in-law of Cloud Soul Palace. Now, the two of them were meeting again in Tianqing Palace because of Ji Tianqing's letter. Xueqi was in a good mood. He smiled and stroked his beard. He praised, "I really did not expect Tianqing to give us such a big surprise. For so many years, the third prince has controlled the Duanmu and Murong families. He has always been aggressive and wanted to destroy Cloud Soul Palace. I originally thought that it would take us many years to defeat the third prince and completely get rid of this problem. It would also hurt us greatly. I did not expect that Tianqing would use such a simple and violent method to take away the third prince's trump card. Tianqing is our Yun family's lucky star. He will save and change the fate of Cloud Soul Palace." Xueqi was very satisfied with Ji Tianqing and praised him. Long Yunxiao also nodded in agreement. He smiled and said, "Ji Tianqing is not an ordinary person. He is very talented and his way of doing things is unpredictable. He can always create all kinds of miracles. Long Zai Tian is this monarch's greatest enemy. In order to contend against him, this monarch has worked hard for 10 years. I originally thought that it would take at least 10 years to completely defeat Long Zaitian. I did not expect that Ji Tianqing would hit the nail on the head. This time, he will definitely take Long Zaitian's life." Xueqi smiled again and asked, "Emperor, how are your preparations going?" Long Yunxiao nodded and said in a playful tone, "The matter has been settled. We're just waiting for Tianqing to appear. Uncle Yun, what about you? Have you gathered everyone?" The corners of Xueqi's mouth curled into a mocking smile. He nodded repeatedly and said, "Humph. Of course they are all here. They are waiting in the city. There will be a good show to watch later." After saying that, the two of them looked at each other and smiled, revealing a look of anticipation. At this moment, Ji Tianqing arrived and walked into the study. "Father-in-law, son of heaven, sorry to keep you waiting." He walked up to the two of them and cupped his hands in greeting. Xueqi hurriedly beckoned for him to sit down beside him. "Tianqing, you've finally come out of seclusion. The things you asked me to arrange have already been prepared. The Son of Heaven's side has also been deployed. We're just waiting for you to come out and take charge of the situation." Ji Tianqing smiled and asked with concern, "Father-in-law, when you went to gather those people, it must not have been very smooth, right?" Xueqi nodded and said with a cold smile, "Yes." Long Zaitian's lackeys did not believe it at first. They still had hope in their hearts and pretended to be confused with me. However, the changes and turmoil in Flying Dragon City were too big. The news had already spread throughout the central state. When those lackeys heard the news, they couldn't sit still anymore. They contacted me one after another to discuss this matter with me. Now, they are all gathered at Wang River House, waiting for you with a heart full of anxiety." Ji Tianqing smiled and nodded. Long Zaitian's power is deeply rooted and his prestige is very deep. It is not something that can be eliminated in 3 to 5 days. If I'm not wrong, the people you gathered this time are all small fries, right? The two big mountains under Long Zitian's command must not have come, right? Yun Zhongqi withdrew his smile and said with some righteous indignation, Tianqing, you guessed right. That old bastard Murong Zhang did not even care about my letter. Also, Divine General Yu Tianhong pretended not to know anything and did not react at all. Ji Tianqing said with a cold smile, they are all tyrants of a region. Of course they can keep their composure. How can they submit so easily? However, this is also within my expectations. It will not affect our plan. Let's go to Wang River House and deal with those small fries first. As for Murong Zhang and Yu Tianhong, I will go find them personally. After that, the three of them discussed some more plans and reached a consensus. The three of them left Tianqing Palace together and flew out of the monarch mansion. They rushed to Wang River House in Central State City. Wang River House was located on the bank of a large river in the south of the city. It was an ancient palace with 1,000 years of history. It was also a landmark building in Central State City. For nearly 200 years, Wang River House had been the property of Cloud Spirit Palace. It was also a branch of Cloud Spirit Palace in Central State City. Wang River House was heavily guarded both inside and outside. No one was allowed to come close. It was very safe and secretive to discuss important matters there. Ji Tianqing, Yun Zhongqi, and Long Yunxiao arrived at Wang River House and went straight to the conference hall. Outside the meeting hall, there were more than 30 guards standing guard. There were more than 100 guards around, either overtly or covertly monitoring the surroundings, strictly protecting the conference hall. In the spacious and bright conference hall, there were more than 60 martial arts experts gathered. All of them were wearing luxurious clothes and had a dignified aura. These people were all famous tyrants of Central State. They were either the family heads of wealthy families, city lords, or the leaders of gangs. Normally, these people would be the focus of attention wherever they went. They were very imposing and dignified. When they gathered together, they talked loudly, exchanging pleasantries and flattering each other. They were all the upper-class people of Central State City. However, at this moment, these 60-plus experts all had their heads drooped, dejected, terrified, and uneasy postures. They stood in the conference hall with their hands hanging by their sides. They were listless like frosted eggplants. They did not talk and could not squeeze out a smile. The conference hall was very quiet. These experts were like prisoners waiting to be sentenced to death. When Ji Tianqing strode into the hall with Yun Zhongqi and Long Yunxiao, everyone raised their heads and looked at him in unison. Everyone looked at him with eyes full of respect and fear. Ji Tianqing glanced at the people in the conference hall and walked toward the main seat. Yun Zhongqi and Long Yunxiao followed beside him and explained the situation to him as they walked. Tianqing, according to our investigation and the information we have, the third prince has more than 200 factions under his command. Most of the leaders of the factions have joined him because of benefits and have not been poisoned. Only these 60 or so people are more powerful, so the third prince has given them special treatment and has planted all kinds of goo in them. Ji Tianqing nodded to show that he understood. He walked to the main seat in the north of the conference hall and stood still. He did not sit down. Instead, he looked down at everyone with a powerful aura. After the 60-plus powerful warriors all lowered their heads in fear, he said with a cold and deep voice, "You are all famous and powerful warriors of the Central Plains, and you are all smart people. You all know the reason why you are gathered here today, so I will not repeat it. Now, your lives are in my hands. I only need a thought to kill you all. You will turn into a pool of blood on the spot. Not even your bones will be left." As he spoke, he slowly stretched out his right hand. A 5-colored light flashed in his palm, and a 2-foot-tall 5-colored altar appeared. The 60 or so experts in the conference hall all looked at the 10,000 gu altar with fear and horror in their eyes. At this moment, when they saw the 10,000 gu altar with their own eyes, they could finally confirm that the news from Flying Dragon City was true. The third prince's trump card was really taken away by Ji Tianqing. Chapter 1124. The main hall was silent and the atmosphere was oppressive. More than 60 powerful experts were trembling in fear and didn't even dare to breathe loudly. Their lives were in the hands of Ji Tianqing, and in their eyes, Ji Tianqing was a temperamental and arrogant guy. They didn't know Ji Tianqing's purpose and couldn't guess what Ji Tianqing wanted to do. Ji Tianqing looked at everyone expressionlessly and said in a low voice, "Although I control your life and death and can kill all of you with a thought, you should be thankful. I'm not a bloodthirsty person and I don't care about the power and wealth in your hands. I've gathered you here today to give you an order. I want you to do one thing. It's very simple and won't make you suffer, nor will it harm your power and wealth." At this point, the corners of his mouth curled up into a sneer and he said in a playful tone, "You have to jointly submit a memorial to the imperial court. Write down all the dirty deeds and evil deeds that you have done for Long Zetian and present them to the imperial court. I know that most of those heinous deeds were done by Long Zetian who threatened you. It wasn't your original intention. Now, I'll uphold justice for you. Write down the ins and outs of the matter in detail, and hand it over to the imperial court for judgment." Hearing his words, more than 60 experts' faces suddenly changed and revealed looks of horror. "What? We want to jointly expose the third prince's crimes? How is this possible? If those things are reported to the imperial court, none of us will live. The third prince's power is deeply rooted and far beyond our imagination. He also has his eyes and ears in the imperial court. Even if we tell the truth and submit a memorial to the imperial court, I'm afraid it will be intercepted by the third prince and then we will all be eliminated by him. No. This matter absolutely cannot be done. I will not sacrifice all my life to do this." More than 60 experts were whispering to each other. They were very opposed to this matter. If Ji Tianqing only wanted to control them and make them swear loyalty to him, then things would be much easier. In any case, it didn't matter who they were loyal to or who they worked for. It was just a change of master, so there was no loss or psychological burden. However, they would never dare to complain to the imperial court about the third prince's crimes. Ji Tianqing had already expected such a reaction from the crowd, so he wasn't surprised or angry at all. He swept his cold gaze across the crowd and saw a short and fat middle-aged man in a brocade robe who was resisting the most fiercely. Not only did this person shout angrily, but he also instigated others to resist this order. Ji Tianqing frowned and secretly activated the myriad goo altar, unleashing an invisible goo Dao divine power and detonating the goo poison in the middle-aged man's body. The middle-aged man was talking loudly, full of righteous indignation, trying to persuade the other two patriarchs not to submit. Suddenly, a series of crackling sounds came from inside his body, like the sound of soybeans being fried. His body shook and stiffened on the spot, black blood gushing out of his mouth and nose. He twisted his body with difficulty and widened his eyes, looking at Ji Tianqing with resentment. However, he could no longer make any sound. After a few gurgling sounds came out of his throat, he fell to the ground on his back and stopped breathing. Next, white smoke rose from his corpse, and it quickly corroded and festered. In just 10 breaths, his flesh and bones were completely corroded, turning into a pool of black blood. The hall was suddenly filled with a pungent smell and the smell of blood. The noisy crowd witnessed this scene with their own eyes. They were so scared that their faces turned pale. Their eyes were filled with fear, and they all retreated far away. The word death was said very lightly, as if there was nothing to be afraid of. However, everyone saw with their own eyes that a living person died in an instant, corroded into a pool of blood in the blink of an eye. Such a strong shock and impact, how could they not feel fear and respect? Those powerhouses who were shouting about disobeying the order all shut up obediently. They felt uneasy, afraid that Ji Tianqing would kill them on the spot. Ji Tianqing's eyes swept across the crowd, and he shouted expressionlessly, "I, Ji Tianqing, am not a cruel and bloodthirsty person, but I am definitely not a soft-hearted kind person. What I said just now is an order. You have no room to bargain. Whoever dares to resist will have the same ending. Don't try to fool me. If you agree on the spot and then disobey in public, then you will still die, and not even your bones will be left." His tone was as gloomy as ice, containing an awe-inspiring majesty, making more than 60 powerhouses tremble and feel fear from the bottom of their hearts. After a moment of silence, some people who knew what was good for them hurriedly expressed their opinions. "Don't worry, Regent Lord Tianqing, we will follow your orders and write a memorial when we return. Regent Lord Tianqing, everyone in Central State knows that you are the #1 genius of our clan, noble and virtuous, and we are willing to pledge our loyalty to you. From now on, Regent Lord Tianqing, you are our master. We will do whatever you ask us to do." With someone taking the lead, there were others who followed suit. The hall immediately became lively, and more than 60 powerhouses expressed their opinions. The remaining few who were still hesitating did not dare to anger Ji Tianqing, and they reluctantly expressed their promises. Ji Tianqing was very satisfied with the crowd's performance, and he nodded slightly. Very good. Since you are so sensible, then carry out this matter as soon as possible. If anyone dares to dawdle or disobey in public, I will let them suffer endless pain and torture, and die in torment and despair. Of course, as long as you perform well, after this matter is over, I will remove the poison in your bodies one by one, and return you your freedom. Hearing his last sentence, many powerhouses widened their eyes in disbelief, and they exclaimed, What? Remove the poison and return us our freedom? This can't be true, right? Did I hear wrongly? Regent Lord Tianqing is so kind, and he wants to remove the poison curse for us? That's great. It seems that Regent Lord Tianqing is not lying. He really doesn't care about our little power and wealth, and he doesn't care at all. Regent Lord Tianqing, if you are really willing to remove the poison, you will be our benefactor. What are you hesitating for? We have to follow the orders of Regent Lord Tianqing, submit a memorial to the imperial court, and completely expose that treacherous and despicable bastard, the third prince. In order to no longer be tortured by the poison, and for freedom, I will risk my life to expose the third prince to the imperial court. Hearing that Ji Tianqing was willing to remove the poison, more than 60 powerhouses were wild with excitement, and they were so excited that they spoke incoherently. They were both in awe and grateful to Ji Tianqing, and they no longer dared to resist. Chapter 1125. After the matter was settled, over 60 experts left the Riverview Tower one after another. Everyone hurried back and prepared to submit a memorial to the imperial court. Ji Tianqing, Yun Zhongqi, and Long Yunxiao also left the discussion hall and entered the study. After the three of them sat down, they discussed this matter. Ji Tianqing said to Yun Zhongqi, Father-in-law, the leaders of these 60 forces are scattered all over Central State. You need to let the spies of the Hidden Cloud Pavilion secretly monitor their movements. If anyone dares to report this to Long Zai-Tian, kill them on the spot. Yun Zhongqi nodded. All right, leave this matter to me. Ji Tianqing looked at Long Yunxiao and said, Son of Heaven, there are also Long Zaiqian's lackeys and spies in the imperial court. I need you to deal with these people. The 10,000 gu altar has been taken by me. Long Zaiqian will definitely be able to guess my plan, and will definitely make preparations in advance. The memorials that the nobles and experts submit to the imperial court will most likely be intercepted by his lackeys. Before he finished speaking, Long Yunxiao understood his meaning and quickly nodded. Tianqing, don't worry. I will immediately return to the imperial court to keep an eye on them. I guarantee that the memorials of those nobles and experts will be delivered to the imperial emperor's desk safely. Ji Tianqing smiled and nodded. That's good. Then I will have to trouble you. After saying that, he bid farewell to Yun Zhongqi and Long Yunxiao and left the study. More than 60 rich and powerful families have been taken care of. Of the two powerhouses under Long Zai-Tian, only Murong Zhang of the Murong family and the divine general of the West Wasteland, Yu Tianhong, remain. Murong Zhang was the patriarch of an ancient family. He had a special status and was very powerful. Ji Tianqing also killed Murong Lingfeng and had a blood feud with the Murong family. Therefore, he could not go to the Murong family and persuade Murong Zhang to change sides. His only target was the divine general of the Western Wilderness, Yu Tianhong. After walking out of Wang River House, he did not return to the imperial residence. Instead, he flew out of Central State City and rushed to the border of the Western Wilderness. It was time for revenge. He still hadn't forgotten that 2 months ago, he had been hunted down by Demon Commander Dark Knight. He had desperately fled to the outskirts of Mang City, but Yu Tianhong had refused to let him in. He remembered Yu Tianhong's expression and every word he had said at that time. Before he left Mang City, he had said something to Yu Tianhong. One day, I'll make you regret what you've done today. At that time, even if you kneel down and beg me, it'll be useless. Now it was time to fulfill those words. When Ji Tianqing had left the boundless world and returned to the central continent city, it had taken him half a month's time. However, things were different now. Relying on his profound cultivation, he was able to control the soul magic sword and travel at a speed that was twice as fast as before. 5 days later, he arrived at the border between the Central Plains and the West Wilderness and entered the Mangu mountain range. That evening, He arrived at the outskirts of Mang City and landed on the summit of a 10,000-meter-tall mountain. He wasn't in a hurry to enter the city. Instead, he sat cross-legged on the peak of the mountain and silently meditated to recover the energy he had consumed. The night sky was dark and there were only a few stars that shone faintly. The Manga mountain range was quiet and gloomy. Occasionally, the roars of some demonic beasts could be heard. In the majestic Mangu mountain range, there were specks of lights that shone like stars. On the majestic city walls, there were many teams that were patrolling and cruising. Everything went on as usual. As usual. With the power of the 1,000 venomous insect altar, Ji Tianqing could clearly sense that there was a venomous insect seed in Mang City. There was no doubt that it was a divine venomous insect seed that was planted in Divine General Yu Tianhong's body. He meditated for an entire night and consumed hundreds of spiritual stones to recover his energy to the peak. The next morning, when the sun rose, he left the mountain peak. Swoosh! He turned into a stream of light and flew across the sky to the huge city gate of Mang City. When he landed at the city gate and revealed himself, the guards on the city wall immediately drew their swords and looked at him warily. "Who's there? How dare you barge into Mang City? Are you not afraid of death?" A guard commander on the city wall stared down at Ji Tianqing and asked in a dignified voice. Ji Tianqing glanced at him expressionlessly and said in a low and dignified voice, "Go and report to Yu Tianhong that I, Ji Tianqing, am here. Ask him to come out and see me." Hearing his words, the expressions of the guards on the city wall changed drastically. Everyone revealed shocked and puzzled expressions as they began to whisper to each other. "Ji Tianqing? Why is it this guy again? Last time, this guy was chased by the demon race experts and fled here. He begged Divine General to open the city gate. Why is he here again today? This is unbelievable. Didn't he get killed when he was chased by the demon race experts? How can he still be alive? This guy is too arrogant. How dare he call Divine General by his name and be disrespectful to him? Commander, what should we do? Should we capture this guy or report the news to the Immortal General?" The guard commander was also hesitant and conflicted. He frowned and thought for a long time before he finally made up his mind. No matter what, this guy is the Tianqian region lord, the prince of the monarch mansion. We can't afford to offend him. Even if he is disrespectful to Divine General, we don't have the right to capture him. The only thing we can do now is to report to Divine General and let Divine General resolve this matter himself. Many of the guards expressed their agreement with the commander's words. Therefore, the guard commander sent 2 guards to report to the city lord's mansion. Everyone stood guard on top of the city wall, gripping their weapons tightly, ready for battle. Ji Tianqing stood at the city gate with his hands behind his back expressionlessly. He looked down at the sea of clouds and the scenery below and waited patiently. After about a quarter of an hour, the 2 guards who had reported the news returned to the city wall in a panic. They rushed to the commander as fast as the wind. The guard commander quickly asked, "Did Divine General receive the news? What did he say?" The 2 guards' faces were very ugly. They avoided eye contact and stammered, "Divine General. He asked the guards to throw us out." After Divine General heard the news, he flew into a rage and told us to scram. It seems like he doesn't want to see Ji Tianqing. Hearing their answers, the guard commander noticed that their hair and armor were very messy, as if they had been beaten up. What should we do? The guard commander frowned and was in a dilemma. He pondered for a while with a solemn face, then made up his mind and said to Ji Tianqing, who was standing under the city gate, "Sir Ji Tianqing, our Divine General is busy with official business and has no time to entertain guests. Please leave. He will not see you." Ji Tianqing slowly turned around and looked up at the commander of the guards on the city wall. A meaningful sneer appeared on his face. Chapter 11:26. Ji Tianqing's mocking words stunned all the guards on the city wall. Everyone was stunned as they stared at him, not understanding what he meant. But he didn't bother to explain. He leaped up and flew to the city gate. Then he took out the black broken sword and used the ultimate move of the piercing sword style, stabbing out a cold light. Kaboom! Amidst a deafening explosion, the cold light hit the defensive formation of Mang City. The soul-level array that covered the city gate and the city wall was broken by his sword, creating a huge gap that was more than 10 meters wide. The violent energy turned into a white light and exploded, sending the guards on the city wall flying. The crowd fell from the city wall to the ground like dumplings in a pot, making muffled thuds. The nearby guards were so scared that their faces turned pale. They ran away in panic and didn't dare to get close. Swoosh! Ji Tianqing passed through the gap in the defensive array and landed on the city wall. He ignored the hundreds of guards and took out an exquisite and luxurious spiritual jade throne from his interspatial ring. Then, he boldly sat on the throne. A 5-colored brilliance flashed in his palm, and a 2-foot-tall ancient altar appeared. Expressionlessly, he fiddled with the 5-colored altar and said with a cold tone, "Go tell Yu Tianhong that my patience is limited. Give him one last incense stick's worth of time and let him crawl to see me." Then, he silently activated his Gu Dao divine power and triggered the seed of the divine venomous worm to corrode Yu Tianhong's flesh and soul. The hundreds of guards on the city wall were all dumbfounded. Everyone looked at each other and froze on the spot, not knowing what to do. According to the rules, they should attack Ji Tianqing with full force and kill him on the spot for breaking the array and trespassing into Mang City. But Ji Tianqing's identity was special and he was ridiculously powerful. With just these guards, they wouldn't even be able to touch a single strand of his hair. On the other hand, the other party could kill them all with just a flick of his finger. It was as easy as blowing off dust. The guards did not dare to attack Ji Tianqing, but they could not leave to report the news to the immortal general. After all, the 2 guards who had reported the news had already been beaten up. The immortal general was furious. Who would dare to provoke him at this moment? Was he tired of living? For a moment, the many guards looked at each other and were stunned on the spot, not daring to move. In the end, the guard commander gritted his teeth and made up his mind. He quickly left the city wall and rushed to the city lord's mansion to report the news. The scene on the city wall was rather strange, and so was the atmosphere. Ji Tianqing sat alone on the spiritual jade throne, occupying the top of the city wall. His face was indifferent as he played with the 5-colored altar. No one dared to approach within 100 meters of him. More and more guards and soldiers, as well as the citizens of the city, gathered near the city gate. The crowd grew denser and denser, and the number of people increased as well. Gradually, there were more than 1,000 people, reaching nearly 10,000 people. Everyone stayed far away from Ji Tianqing, looking at him curiously and in awe. They whispered to each other. Through the discussions of the crowd and word of mouth, the crowd quickly learned of his identity and understood his purpose. This man was the #1 genius of the human tribe, the famous sovereign's son, Ji Tianqing. He had come to Mangu City today to settle accounts with the immortal general. When they heard the news, many soldiers and citizens sneered at his misfortune and whispered to each other, "This guy is too arrogant. How dare he break the city defense array and insult the immortal general in public? He's dead meat. Let's wait and see. When the immortal general arrives, he will definitely beat this guy until he kneels down and begs for mercy. This guy is too arrogant to come to Mangu City and provoke our immortal general just because he's the region leader and the emperor's son. Heh, this guy is so young. Maybe he's used to being flattered in the central province, so he doesn't know the immensity of heaven and earth. The immortal general is an important minister of the imperial court and a governor of the border. He has been famous for hundreds of years and commands millions of troops. That guy, Ji Tianqing, is not even fit to carry the shoes of our immortal general. What right does he have to insult our immortal general? Don't worry, the show is about to start. This guy is too reckless. The immortal general will soon teach him a lesson." Countless soldiers and citizens in the city were Yu Tianhong's subordinates and people. Yu Tianhong had a high prestige in Mangu City. In the hearts of the people, he was the spiritual leader and the invincible god of war. They worshipped Yu Tianhong like crazy, and regarded him as the guardian of Mangu City. They would never allow anyone to blaspheme him. Ji Tianqing was so arrogant that he sat on the city wall and waited for Yu Tianhong to kneel down. Of course, he had angered the people. The people worshipped Yu Tianhong as a god and regarded him as the invincible god of war. However, no one knew that a different scene was taking place in the city governor's mansion. Yu Tianhong, who was wearing golden armor and a dark golden helmet, was handling military affairs in the study. He sat on a spacious throne with a silver cloak embroidered with stars and clouds draped over the back of the throne. He was reading a secret letter, frowning as he pondered over the contents of the letter. The letter was from the Flying Dragon City. It was the third prince's handwritten order. As for the contents of the letter, only he and the third prince knew. However, before he could figure out a problem, his body suddenly trembled and he felt a sharp pain in his chest. The sudden pain made him let out a muffled groan and his face turned pale. He immediately put down the letter and bent his back. He covered his chest with his right hand and hurriedly tried to resist the pain. However, it was all in vain. The strange and mysterious divine venomous insect exploded with violent power and quickly corroded his internal organs, blood, flesh, and meridians. In just 2 short breaths, his skin became red like fire and his body temperature became terrifyingly high. It was as if he was about to ignite. Under his skin, his blood vessels swelled up like earthworms and swam through his blood and flesh, causing his entire body to distort and deform. His entire face became dark red and his skin was boiling hot. It was as if he was about to bleed. His eyes became swollen and filled with blood. They popped out of their sockets and almost fell out. Even the corners of his mouth, nostrils, and ears were bleeding black and dirty blood. There was no doubt that the divine venomous insect's power had exploded and was crazily destroying his internal organs and blood vessels. The unparalleled pain caused him to fall to the ground and convulse continuously, letting out painful howls from his mouth. Damn it! The 3-month deadline is not up yet. There is still half time left. Why would the divine venomous insect act up? Could it be that the rumors are true? Ji Tianxing is really him? Yu Tianhong roared as he continued to vomit blood and bits of flesh. Even though he had experienced this kind of pain after the third prince had planted the divine venomous insect in him. Chapter 11:27. The unparalleled pain made Yu Tianhong go crazy. He rolled back and forth on the ground. Just a moment ago, he was dressed in martial attire and looked majestic. At this moment, his hair was disheveled and his face was ferocious. His entire body was distorted like a mutated monster. The study was a mess. The desk, chair, and bookcase were all knocked over by him. It was a mess. At this moment, the guard commander guarding the city gate finally arrived outside the study. The guard commander stood outside the door and reported respectfully. Reporting to the divine general, Ji Tianxing has broken through the city defense array and has broken into the city. He is sitting on the city wall and in front of all the people in the city. He wants you to see him immediately. Yu Tianhong, who was in the study, was shocked and furious when he heard the news. His bloodshot eyes almost popped out of their sockets. What? He actually broke into the city? He asked in a hoarse voice. He stumbled to his feet and broke the door of the study with a bang. He rushed out of the study. With a muffled crash sound, the door was smashed into pieces of wood, splashing in all directions. Yu Tianhong, who was covered in blood and had a ferocious look, rushed to the guard commander. The guard commander was startled and took 2 steps back in fear. He quickly asked, "Sir Divine General, what are you doing? What happened to you?" Yu Tianhong's body trembled. He bent over in pain and spat out blood. He grabbed the guard commander and asked, "Tell me, what else did he say?" This. The guard commander panicked and didn't know how to answer. He couldn't understand how the majestic Lord Divine General had ended up in such a miserable state. Yu Tianhong shouted anxiously and angrily, "Tell me!" As he shouted, black blood spurted out of his nose and mouth and sprayed on the guard commander's face. The guard commander was so scared that he trembled. His back was covered in cold sweat. He didn't dare to hide anything and said truthfully, "Ji Tianxing said that his patience is limited. He will give you one last incense stick of time to crawl to see him." The guard commander was also frightened. His mind was not clear. In a moment of desperation, he repeated Ji Tianxing's words. Normally, he wouldn't have dared to speak to Yu Tianhong like this even if he had 10 times the courage. Even if the furious Yu Tianhong didn't kill him with one punch, he would still punish him according to military law and demote him to a soldier. He regretted it as soon as he finished speaking. He looked at Yu Tianhong with a face full of fear and wanted to defend himself. However, what he didn't expect was that Yu Tianhong actually stretched out his bloodied hand and hugged his arm tightly. He shouted word by word, "Take me to see him." The guard commander was dumbfounded. He had never expected Yu Tianhong to have such a reaction. "What are you waiting for? Hurry up!" Yu Tianhong's eyes were bloodshot as he glared at him and roared hysterically, Oh. Okay, I'll take you there now. The guard commander came back to his senses and nodded repeatedly like a chick pecking at rice. Suppressing the fear and doubt in his heart, he carried the twitching Yu Tianhong on his back and left the city lord's mansion as fast as the wind, rushing towards the city gate. The wide road under the city gate was filled with soldiers and citizens. There were more than 10,000 people. After the news spread in the city, countless people came to watch the show. Everyone wanted to see what the legendary #1 genius of the human race, the Prince Ji Tianqing, looked like. How powerful was this person? How dare he be so arrogant and provoke the divine general in public? Ji Tianqing was still sitting boldly above the city gate, leaning on the spiritual jade throne. He held the 5-colored altar in his right hand. The altar shone with dazzling 5-colored light, releasing the Gu Dao's divine power. On the wide armrest of the throne, there was a bronze incense burner the size of a bowl. A stick of sandalwood was burning on top of it. The time it took for a stick of incense to burn was almost up. More than half of the stick of sandalwood was burned, and only the last bit was left. The soldiers and civilians in all directions all stared at Ji Tianqing with complicated gazes, whispering to each other as they discussed. Some were gloating and waiting to watch a good show. Some were filled with righteous indignation and secretly cursed Ji Tianqing for not knowing his place. Many people were unfamiliar with Ji Tianqing, but they were also in awe of him. They did not dare to criticize him and could only whisper in their hearts. Suddenly, a green light came from the end of the road under the city gate. 2 figures were wrapped in the green light as they ran desperately toward the city gate. Everyone turned their heads and saw a guard commander dressed in black armor carrying Divine General Yu Tianhong, who was dressed in golden armor and had a cape draped over his shoulders. The guard commander was filled with anxiety. While running for his life, he kept shouting, "Get out of the way!" Divine General Yu Tianhong, who was carried on his back, had his armor in a mess and was stained with black blood. His hair was disheveled, and he looked extremely miserable. His body was red, and he bent over like a steamed shrimp. He looked like he was in extreme pain. He was not clear-headed and was on the verge of fainting. Countless soldiers and citizens on the road were dumbfounded when they saw this scene. Everyone widened their eyes in shock and exclaimed in disbelief. They started to talk loudly. "Oh my God! Isn't that the Divine General? What's going on? Why is the Divine General like this? The Divine General seems to be injured. Who is it? Who has such terrifying strength that he can injure the Divine General? What's going on? The Divine General is injured like this, and he still wants to see Ji Tianqing? Who is Ji Tianqing? Why is the Divine General so afraid of him?" Just as everyone was talking, the guard commander carried Yu Tianhong across the road like a gust of wind. He passed through the crowd and arrived at the city gate. Swoosh! The guard commander stopped and hurriedly put Yu Tianhong down, helping him to stand firm. Then, the guard commander panted and looked up at Ji Tianqing on the city wall. He said solemnly, "Lord Ji Tianqing, our Divine General is here." Ji Tianqing looked down at Yu Tianhong from above. When he saw Yu Tianhong's sorry state, his lips curled into a cold smile. "Immortal General, I still remember that 2 months ago, you were standing on the city wall, looking down on us in high spirits. What a great style! You have such a day? How could you end up in such a miserable state?" His voice was not loud, but there was a hint of mockery in his tone. His voice spread clearly throughout the area, and the tens of thousands of soldiers and citizens heard him clearly. Yu Tianhong endured the pain of having his heart pierced by thousands of swords. He pushed the guard commander away and staggered to his feet. He wiped the blood from the corner of his mouth and looked up at Ji Tianqing with bloodshot eyes. He said in a hoarse voice, "Ji Tianqing, I didn't expect you to be so lucky. Not only did you escape, but you also stole the 3rd prince's treasure. I have indeed underestimated you. I have nothing to say now. The winner takes all. You can kill me or torture me as you wish." Chapter 11:28. Seeing Yu Tianhong's reaction, Ji Tianqing raised his eyebrows. "Do you think that since you're going to die anyway, you might as well fight to the end and die with dignity?" He looked at Yu Tianhong with a smile and asked in a mocking tone. Yu Tianhong clenched his fists and pursed his lips. He didn't say anything, silently agreeing with this statement. The civilians and soldiers around the city gate were also confused. They didn't know what was going on and started whispering to each other. Ha ha ha. If that's the case, I'll let you know that death isn't scary. What's scary is living a life worse than death. As he spoke, Ji Tianqing stretched out his right hand and made a hand seal. He controlled the Gu Dao's divine power and the divine Gu in Yu Tianhong's body. Suddenly, the divine Gu in Yu Tianhong's body exploded and ate away at his flesh and soul. A soul-devouring and bone-piercing pain instantly assaulted his entire body, causing him to fall to the ground with a plop, violently twitching and rolling about. Ah! Yu Tianhong's face twisted as he screamed miserably. His skin continued to crack as blood spurted out. The armor he was wearing had been torn apart by him, turning into a pile of broken metal pieces that were thrown on the ground. The purple robe he wore under the armor was completely soaked in blood. Moreover, his body swelled up violently, and countless lumps appeared all over his body. His feet and legs were rotting at a speed visible to the naked eye. His flesh turned into a pool of black blood and only his bones were left. The 10,000 soldiers and civilians around the city gate saw this horrifying scene with their own eyes. Their faces turned pale and they broke out in cold sweat. Countless people retreated in fear. They didn't dare to get close to Yu Tianhong for fear of being infected by the invisible curse. That's right. The ordinary soldiers and civilians were weak and inexperienced. They all thought that Yu Tianhong was cursed. Below Yu Tianhong's waist, he had turned into a skeleton and was stained with black blood. Above his waist, he still had flesh and blood. However, he was covered in sarcomas and bulges. He looked ugly and hideous. He rolled on the ground and wailed, begging for mercy in a hoarse voice. Ah! Ji Tianqing. Lord Ji, stop it. I beg you. Let me go. I was wrong. I shouldn't have done this to you. I admit my mistake. Yu Tianhong was in so much pain that he wanted to die. His mind and will had collapsed. He quickly surrendered to Ji Tianqing and begged for mercy. The soldiers and civilians were all dumbfounded. No one had expected that the majestic immortal general would be humiliated like this, kneeling on the ground like a dead dog and begging for mercy. Just a moment ago, many civilians and soldiers were waiting to see a good show. In their opinion, as long as the divine general appeared, Ji Tianqing would definitely die. He would definitely be beaten to the point of kneeling and begging for mercy. But now, the one who was kneeling and begging for mercy was Yu to their god of war. This was simply too shocking. Many people could not believe their eyes. Their hearts were filled with shock and fear. At the same time, many people couldn't understand. Wasn't the divine general an expert of the spirit refining realm? Why couldn't he resist Ji Tianqing at all? Why was he being tortured to be tortured? For a soul refinement cultivator, even if their physical body was destroyed, their soul would still be intact. They still had powerful combat power. But only Yu Tianhong and Ji Tianqing knew that the seed of the divine venomous insect was planted in the soul. Yu Tianhong's soul couldn't use any power at all. It could even collapse at any time. Ji Tianqing only needed to think about it and his soul would be destroyed. He would die completely. There was no other way. Yu Tianhong had been planted with the divine venomous insect 8 years ago. The seed of the divine venomous insect had been planted in his soul. It was deeply rooted. Ji Tianqing temporarily stopped casting. He held the 5-colored altar in his right hand and looked down at Yu Tianhong expressionlessly. The corners of his mouth curled up, revealing a disdainful sneer. Heh. I thought you had some backbone. I didn't expect you to be such a weakling. Were those unyielding words of yours just now all made up? All the people in the city and your soldiers are watching. Where's your face? These words could be said to strike at the heart. Yu Tianhong was completely humiliated. The 10,000 people around the city gate all felt deeply humiliated. They lowered their heads and couldn't bear to look at Yu Tianhong's miserable appearance. Yu Tianhong was also humiliated to the point of vomiting blood. His reputation was ruined today. From now on, he could only become the laughingstock of the world. He raised his head with all his might and glared at Ji Tianqing. He shouted in grief and indignation, Ji Tianqing, I have already admitted defeat. What else do you want? I didn't assassinate you, nor did I become your enemy. Don't go too far. Ji Tianqing looked at him indifferently and sneered. That day when I was being chased by Demon General Dark Knight, your actions, could it be that you have forgotten? All these years, you have worked hard for Long Zitian. Do you dare to not admit the dirty deeds you have done? Of course, let's not talk about these things. I am here today to take revenge for that day. You should still remember the words I said to you when I escaped from the city gate. Yu Tianhong's expression changed drastically. He immediately recalled the words Ji Tianqing had said back then. One day, I will make you regret what you have done today. At that time, even if you kneel down and beg me, it will be useless. At that time, he was complacent. He thought that Ji Tianqing would not be able to escape the demon general's pursuit and would die without a doubt. Therefore, he didn't take those words to heart at all. He treated them as the desperate wails of a dying person, which could only make him a joke. But he never would have thought that those words would come true so quickly. Thinking of this, Yu Tianhong was filled with grief and indignation. He was humiliated to the extreme. He shouted in a hoarse voice, Ji Tianqing, what do you want to do? Ji Tianqing looked at him with a smile and said indifferently, What do I want to do? It's very simple. Crawl in front of me and kowtow to me in apology. Then, you write a memorial to the emperor. Write down the crimes that Long Zitian forced you to do in full detail and hand it to the emperor. Yu Tianhong subconsciously roared, Don't even think about it. Ji Tianqing was not angry. He sneered and said, Ha ha ha, you are really a lowly person. It was obviously Long Zitian who used the divine venomous insect to control you and coerce you to work for him. And you are used to being a lackey. You would rather die than betray him. You even risked your life to protect him. People like you are really a lowly wretch. Yu Tianhong was insulted in public. He was so humiliated that he vomited 3 mouthfuls of black blood in grief and indignation. The surrounding 10,000 people, when they heard Ji Tianqing's words, vaguely understood something. They all began to discuss. Ji Tianqing saw that Yu Tianhong was silent and his expression kept changing. He was hesitating and weighing the pros and cons. He continued to say, Yu Tianhong, if you do as I say, not only will I spare your lowly life, I will also help you get rid of the divine venomous insect. Chapter 1129. The power of the divine venomous insect made Yu Tianhong tremble with fear. Even if Ji Tianqing did not promise him any benefits, after being tortured a few times, he would have a mental breakdown and be forced to agree to Ji Tianqing's conditions. What's more, Ji Tianqing had promised in public that if he obeyed, he would remove the divine venomous insect for him. How could he not be tempted? Ever since he was controlled by Long Zitian with the divine venomous insect, he had lost his freedom. A dignified divine general of the imperial court, a governor who guarded a region, had become Long Zitian's lackey. How humiliating was this? And now, Ji Tianqing had given him a chance to regain his freedom. He only had fear and hatred towards Long Zitian. There was no loyalty to him at all. How could he give up this opportunity? He only thought for a moment and nodded. He looked up at Ji Tianqing and said, Ji Tianqing, I can agree to your conditions. But so many people are watching. You can't go back on your promise. Otherwise, even if I have to risk my life, I will make you lose your reputation. Ji Tianqing looked at him indifferently and sneered, The one who will lose his reputation is you. You are just a dog now. You have no right to negotiate with me. Puff. Yu Tianhong was filled with grief and indignation. He opened his mouth and spat out a mouthful of blood. But he had no choice. He could only endure the humiliation and indignation. He used his arms to support himself and slowly climbed up the city wall. He crawled slowly on the ground and climbed up the stairs beside the city wall. Then he climbed up the stairs step by step. The 10,000 people around the city gate also felt deeply humiliated. They all lowered their heads with pale faces and did not dare to make a sound. Yu Tianhong was their spiritual leader and the god of war they worshipped. But now, the god of war was like a dead dog, being humiliated and manipulated by others. Many people and soldiers secretly thought that if it were them, they would rather commit suicide on the spot than be humiliated like this. But Yu Tianhong still wanted to drag out an ignoble existence. This made many commoners and soldiers question and despise him. The glorious image of Yu Tianhong in everyone's hearts collapsed at this moment, becoming a synonym for humiliation. From now on, he would forever be nailed to the pillar of shame. Even after what happened today, he was still the divine general of the West Wilderness, guarding Mango City. He was no longer the god of war in everyone's hearts, nor was he some spiritual leader. After a long time, Yu Tianhong climbed up the city wall with difficulty under the gaze of more than 10,000 people. He came to Ji Tianqing's side, knelt at Ji Tianqing's feet, and kowtowed to apologize in front of everyone. Then, following Ji Tianqing's instructions, he took out a jade slip on the spot and inputted his soul's information into it. He recorded all the crimes that Long Zai Tian had coerced him with a divine venomous insect and ordered him to do in detail in the jade slip. He originally hated Long Zai Tian to the bones. Now that he exposed Long Zai Tian's crimes to the monarch, he naturally spared no effort. After all, he was also afraid of Long Zai Tian's revenge and hoped that Long Zai Tian would be severely punished by the imperial court. It would be best if he could be executed. A quarter of an hour later, he finished writing the memorial and cast a spell to send out the jade slip. Whoosh! The jade slip turned into a streak of golden light and instantly rushed high into the sky, flying towards the direction of the imperial court. After doing all this, he heaved a sigh of relief as if a heavy burden had been lifted from his shoulders. He looked at Ji Tianqing with pleading eyes and said, "Ji Tianqing, I have done as you asked. Now, it's time for you to fulfill your promise and remove the divine venomous insect for me." Ji Tianqing glanced at him and sneered, "I said that I would remove the divine venomous insect for you, but not now. Don't worry. Wait for the imperial court to deal with Long Zai Tian. After this matter is over, I will find you." After saying that, he put away the 1,000 venomous insect altar and the spirit jade throne, turned around and flew into the sky, leaving Mang City. Yu Tianhong lay on the city wall, looking at his departing figure. He was so angry that his whole body trembled, and he was so sullen that he almost went crazy. After a long time, when Ji Tianqing's figure disappeared into the horizon, he turned around. He turned his head and looked at the city gate, at the more than 10,000 people on the street. But as far as his eyes could see, he saw that everyone's eyes were filled with deep disappointment and disdain. Even those subordinates and soldiers who were loyal to him were looking at him coldly and indifferently. There was no longer a trace of respect in their eyes. This scene made Yu Tianhong even more indignant. He waved his fists in anger and smashed them on the city wall below him. Boom! Amidst the deafening noise, the city wall was smashed by his fist. More than half of the city wall collapsed, and bricks and stones flew everywhere. Countless civilians and soldiers were frightened and fled in panic. In the blink of an eye, the more than 10,000 people gathered at the city gates scattered like birds and beasts. The street became empty. Yu Tianhong's heart was like dead ashes. He silently circulated his energy and reformed his body. Soon, his legs and feet were restored. He walked down the city wall in a daze and staggered towards the city lord's mansion. There were more than 300 guards on the city wall, and more than a dozen guard captains and commanders. But everyone looked at him with complicated eyes. No one came to help him, and no one cared about him. The divine general of the western wilderness had become so desolate. Soon 5 days passed. Late at night on the 5th day, Ji Tianqing returned to the emperor's mansion in Zhongzhou City. He meditated in the room and used dozens of spirit stones to recover his magic power. A few hours later, the sky was bright. Ji Tianqing finished his meditation and walked out of the room. The plan is almost done. Dozens of noble families in Zhongzhou and the divine general of the western wilderness have jointly exposed Long Zaitian to the imperial court. 10 days have passed. I believe the imperial emperor has thought about how to deal with this matter? He thought to himself. He was about to send a jade slip to Long Yunxiao to ask about the imperial court situation. But at this moment, the voice of the guard commander came from outside the door. Reporting to the region lord, His Majesty the Emperor has come to visit. He is waiting for you in the study. He said that he has something to discuss with you. Ji Tianqing raised his eyebrows and smiled. He said to himself, Haha, I was just talking about him and he has already come to find me. On the matter of dealing with Long Zaitian, Long Yunxiao is even more anxious than me. When he rushed to the study, he saw Long Yunxiao standing in the study with a stack of dark golden documents inlaid with jade in his hand. Seeing him enter the study, Long Yunxiao smiled. His eyes lit up and he said excitedly, Tianqing, where have you been? Why haven't I seen you for 10 days? You don't know, but in these 10 days, many wonderful things have happened in Zhongzhou. It's really earth-shattering and shocking. You actually missed it. What a pity. Long Yunxiao had always been a steady, cultured, and refined person. It was rare for him to be this excited and agitated. Ji Tianqing saw his reaction and guessed the reason. He asked with a playful smile, "Emperor, something that can make you so excited must be extraordinary." Chapter 11:30. Ji Tianqing's words startled Long Yunxiao. He immediately withdrew his excitement and wore a wry smile. "Tianqing, this matter is no small matter and involves a lot of people. How can the emperor make such a hasty decision? Even if the imperial court wants to punish Long Zitian, they have to investigate clearly and confirm all the evidence before they can make a judgment." Hearing him say this, Ji Tianqing nodded to show that he understood. "I understand. The imperial court must be careful and cautious in making any decisions. Moreover, this matter concerns the princes of the imperial court, as well as the two great families and countless rich and powerful families. Almost a quarter of the noble families of the human clan are involved in this matter. Even if the imperial court uses all their strength, it is impossible to investigate clearly within 10 days. In that case, the imperial court will have to wait at least 1 or 2 months to punish and sentence Long Zitian." Long Yunxiao thought for a moment and nodded. The imperial emperor attaches great importance to this matter. He has been investigating this matter for the past few days and treats it as the imperial court's top priority. Although it won't take as long as 2 months, it will definitely take a month. As he spoke, he placed a stack of documents in front of Ji Tianqing. "Tianqing, don't be anxious. Long Zitian will not be able to escape this time. We just need to wait patiently for the results." These were all the documents that the imperial court had approved of this matter. It involved the Duanmu family, the Murong family, the divine generals of the West Wasteland, and dozens of city lords and patriarchs of the rich and powerful families. The imperial emperor was furious. He stated in public that he would investigate this matter thoroughly and deal with it impartially. He would not let the human clan continue to be corrupted. In these 10 days, the imperial court had captured the leaders of hundreds of forces, including the city lords and patriarchs. The entire Flying Dragon City was surrounded by the imperial court's imperial army. The forces under Long Zitian's command were all detained by the imperial court. His Flying Dragon Palace was also sealed up and all his wealth was confiscated by the imperial court. Moreover, even Long Zitian himself was summoned back by the imperial court overnight and imprisoned in a secret room, not allowed to go out. The entire central region knew that Long Zitian, this big tree, had fallen. The weeds surrounding his subordinates had all been removed. No matter how the imperial court deals with him in the end, he is completely finished. The forces that he built for half of his life will be completely destroyed. Long Yunxiao told Ji Tianqing about what had happened in the past 10 days, and told him about the current situation in the central province. After listening, Ji Tianqing made up his mind. He nodded slightly and said, "The development of the situation is basically the same as what I expected. However, there would always be some clues about Long Zitian controlling the two aristocratic families, the West Baron divine generals and the rich and powerful families. I don't believe that the imperial court and the imperial emperor don't know anything." Long Yunxiao restrained his excitement and said with a grave expression, "That's right. A few years ago, the sovereign emperor noticed the signs and roughly understood this matter. But I also don't know why the emperor didn't take the initiative to bring up this matter, nor did he warn Long Zitian. Tianqing, could it be that the sovereign emperor already knew about Long Zitian's crimes and might bend the law for personal gain and be lenient?" Ji Tianqing shook his head and sneered. "It's not to the extent of bending the law for personal gain. If the matter is blown up, even if the sovereign emperor does it for the world to see, he will still deal with it impartially. I just feel that no one can guess the sovereign emperor's thoughts. I'm afraid that he will give Long Zitian a way out and let him escape death, giving him a chance to make a comeback." Long Yunxiao frowned and said with a gloomy expression, "That's right. No one can guess the sovereign emperor's thoughts. Even I can't guess his thoughts. But don't worry, even if the sovereign emperor spares Long Zitian's life, I will not let him go. This is the best chance for me to completely destroy him. How can I let him have a chance to make a comeback?" Ji Tianqing nodded and asked with a grave expression, "Did the sovereign emperor mention the 10,000 gu altar or me?" Long Yunxiao frowned and recalled for a moment before nodding. "The sovereign emperor did not specifically mention you, but he did mention this matter once in the study room. At that time, only I, the imperial tutor, and the sovereign emperor were present. The sovereign emperor mentioned the 10,000 gu altar, saying that it was an ancient evil item that caused the extinction of the Gu race. This item has been passed down to this day and will only bring disaster to the world. It must be destroyed to prevent future troubles. The imperial tutor mentioned that the 10,000 Gu altar had fallen into your hands. He believed that you would make good use of it. The sovereign emperor didn't seem to agree at that time, but he didn't say anything. Long Yunxiao paused for a moment and added, I can feel that the sovereign emperor seems to be deliberately avoiding you. Even when he was dealing with Long Zitian, he rarely mentioned you. Ji Tianqing frowned and thought for a moment before revealing a playful smile. He muttered, Perhaps the sovereign emperor wants to protect me. He doesn't want me to be in the limelight and become the target of public criticism? That's possible. Long Yunxiao nodded in agreement. Next, the two of them talked about some other trivial matters. They were all about the imperial court and the central continent. In the end, the two reached a consensus. Long Yunxiao bowed and was about to leave. Tianqing, I will keep an eye on the imperial court. I will not give Long Zitian a chance to make a comeback. He has made a lot of preparations before and eliminated a lot of evidence and witnesses in an attempt to reduce his crime. However, I will keep an eye on him so that he can't act recklessly. You don't have to worry about the imperial court. Just wait patiently for the results. Ji Tianqing nodded and said, Okay, I will need you to pay more attention to Central State and the imperial court. Don't let Long Zitian escape. Long Yunxiao cupped his hands and said goodbye. Then, he turned around and left the study. Ji Tianqing sat alone in the study. He picked up a stack of documents on the desk and read them one by one. After about an hour, he had finished reading most of the documents. At this time, the guard commander came to the door and reported respectfully. Reporting to the region lord, the prince of the water clan Tai Yi has come to visit. Ji Tianqing immediately put down the documents and raised his eyebrows. He smiled and said, What's the occasion today? Long Yunxiao had just left, and now Tai Yi was here? I also have something to look for him. It's convenient for him to come. After saying that, he asked the guard commander to bring Tai Yi to the study. Not long after, Tai Yi was led by the guard commander to the door of the study. As soon as he entered the study, he smiled and said to Ji Tianqing, Tianqing, I have long wanted to visit you and ask you some things. When I heard that you came out of seclusion, I hurried over. Ji Tianqing stood up to greet him and greeted him. After the two exchanged greetings, they sat down and chatted while drinking tea. Tai Yi looked at him with shining eyes and said with emotion, I was worried that it would not be easy for you to deal with the third prince. I didn't expect you to be so strong that you directly used your trump card and took away his treasure. Chapter 1131. Tai Yi was looking for Ji Tianqing mainly to ask about Long Zitian. In these 10 days, many things had happened in Central Province, and many rumors had spread. Tai Yi had a powerful intelligence network, so of course he knew about the news and Long Zitian's movements. He just wanted to ask Ji Tianqing what his plans were, and if there was anything he needed his help with. However, Ji Tianqing declined his good intentions. Tai Yi, thank you for your kind help, but I don't have any plans for the time being, so I won't trouble you. Speaking of which, I have something I want to talk to you about. Tai Yi looked expectant. He quickly asked, Is there anything I can help you with? Just tell me. Ji Tianqing smiled and said in a playful tone, Xiao Han, the divine general of Donglin who guards the East Sea, has had many dealings with your imperial court. You should be familiar with him, right? Hearing this, Tai Yi looked confused and asked with a frown, What? Did Xiao Han offend you and you want to attack him? But before, didn't you two go to my imperial court together? Didn't you seem to have a good relationship? Ji Tianqing waved his hand and said with a smile, You misunderstand. I don't want to harm him. I just want to know more about him and ask for some information. You don't have to ask about the specific reasons. Just tell me what you know. Only then did Tai Yi reveal a look of understanding. He nodded and said, So that's how it is. Xiao Han's character was still relatively upright. He doesn't covet benefits or power, nor does he bend the law for personal gain. He's always done things impartially. Speaking of which, this guy is very loyal to the imperial court. No matter how we bribed or tried to rope him in, he didn't waver at all. He gave father a headache. Ji Tianqing smiled playfully. Fortunately, Xiao Han is a decent person. If he was bribed by you, who knows how many bays and territories we would have lost. Tai was a bit embarrassed and waved his hand. Ahem. Let's not talk about this. Let's talk about Xiao Han. Xiao Han was neither the most famous nor the most powerful among the 4 immortal generals of the human clan. However, he is trusted by the human imperial court the most. This man is very steady. It is not an exaggeration to say that he is very shrewd and cunning. Ji Tianxing listened silently, and his understanding of Xiao Han increased. About half an hour later, Tai Yi told him everything he knew. Then, he took out a jade slip from his interspatial ring and handed it to Ji Tianxing. Xiao Han is a human divine general guarding the border of the Eastern Sea. He often interacts with the imperial court of our race. Of course, we know him very well and have investigated him in detail. This is the information in my hands. It records everything about Xiao Han. If you have time you can slowly study it. Ji Tianxing accepted the jade scroll and cupped his hands. Tai Yi, thank you for your help. Tai Yi waved his hand and said seriously, we are brothers. There is no need to thank me for such a small thing. The two chatted for a while more before Tai Yi bid farewell and left Tianqing Palace. Ji Tianxing returned to his room and took out the jade scroll to read the information in it. The information Tai Yi gave him was extremely detailed. There were more than 100,000 words, and it recorded everything about Xiao Han. It took him 4 hours to finish reading the information from beginning to end. Through this information, he learned about Xiao Han's background and experiences. Xiao Han was born in a mysterious and ancient aristocratic family, the Xiao clan. The Xiao clan was a huge force that could be compared to the 3 ancient aristocratic families. It had 1,000 years of history since it was founded. Its family background was deep and had a long history. However, the Xiao clan had always lived in seclusion in a mysterious forbidden land and rarely appeared in front of the world. This hidden aristocratic family did not stir up trouble in the central state, nor did they fight for power. Therefore no one knew about them. However, every disciple who walked out of the Xiao clan was an outstanding martial arts genius. Every 30 years or so, 1 or 2 Xiao clan disciples would leave the forbidden land and enter the central state. From then on, the Xiao clan disciples would rise like comets. Their reputation would spread quickly across the continent, and they would become a powerful force. 800 years ago, one of the Xiao clan disciples had made great contributions to the human imperial court. He was conferred the title of Divine General of Donglin and guarded a region. Since then, the Xiao clan had produced 3 divine generals, all of whom guarded the borders for the human race. Xiao Han was the 3rd divine general of the Xiao clan, and he was also the most famous powerhouse in the Xiao clan. Over the past 1,000 years, the Xiao clan disciples had spread their branches and established many powerful forces in the central state. However, the Xiao clan that the world knew today was the clan founded by Xiao Han. It occupied Wuyue City in the central state. Wuyue City was Xiao Han's fief. It occupied 100 miles of land and had more than 4 million people. Among the 100 cities in the central state, Wuyue City's military and forces were considered top-notch. However, the Xiao clan kept a low profile and did not associate with the other aristocratic families. They also did not stir up trouble. This ancient city, hidden among the mountains and rivers, had always been peaceful and stable. The people lived and worked in peace. Therefore, Wuyue City was not well known. It was not widely known by the people of the central state. As for the Xiao clan, the ancient hidden sect, no one knew about them. Only the imperial courts, top aristocratic families, and forces knew about the Xiao clan. After learning about this, Ji Tianxing focused on the Xiao clan. The gift that Xiao Han gave to Long Zitian was a treasure from 1,000 years ago. It was sealed with a formation created by Kenshin. Coincidentally, the Xiao clan is also an ancient hidden sect aristocratic family. It seems that the problem lies with the Xiao clan. He thought for a while and vaguely guessed some clues. The next morning, he instructed the housekeeper of the Tianqing Palace and left the imperial residence alone for Wuyue City. He wanted to go to the Xiao clan in Wuyue City and ask them about this matter. Wuyue City was located in the northwest of the central state. It was 1,000,000 miles away from Zhongzhou City. Ji Tianxing flew for 6 days straight before he finally arrived at Wuyue City, covered in dust. When he arrived at Wuyue City, it was already the morning of the 7th day. The sun rose from the east and the golden rays of the sun shone on the earth. He was flying thousands of feet high in the sky. Below his feet was an endless stretch of majestic mountains. The majestic mountains and huge mountains were filled with lush green forests that emitted a strong aura of green wood. 100 miles ahead, 3 huge mountains intersected. One of them was a huge valley with a radius of more than 100 miles. The valley that was surrounded by mountains and had 2 rivers flowing through it was Wuyue City. Ji Tianqing flew over the mountains and arrived above Wuyue City. He looked down at the ancient city from above. He saw that the ancient city was surrounded by grayish-white stone walls. Chapter 1132. Ji Tianqing observed from the sky for a while before landing outside the city gates. Wuyue City was located in a remote area and in the middle of a mountain range. For ordinary martial artists and citizens, it was difficult to traverse. Therefore, there were not many citizens and merchants going in and out of the city gates. There were more than 50 black-armored city guards guarding the city gates. They wore armor and carried swords, and their auras were iron-blooded. A few citizens and martial artists from the nearby villages were queuing up to be checked by the city guards. Ji Tianqing followed behind the line. After being checked, he paid 2 spirit stones in taxes before being allowed to enter the city. He calmly crossed the city gates and entered the ancient city. He walked toward the city center as if he was taking a stroll. As he walked toward the city center, he looked at the architectural style of the city. The environment of the ancient city was clean and tidy. The buildings were very close together. The streets and alleys were bustling with people, and the sound of peddlers calling out their wares could be heard. But overall, Wuyue City did not give off the feeling of being bustling and bustling. It was quiet and leisurely. The citizens and peddlers in the city were leisurely and unhurried. This invisible atmosphere relaxed one's mind and made one feel inexplicably safe and happy. Ji Tianqing could see that the security of Wuyue City was very good. The people were simple and honest, and the citizens were very prosperous and stable. Of course, this was due to the Shao family. The Shao family controlled Wuyue City and managed it in an orderly and strict manner. 2 hours later, Ji Tianqing arrived at the city center and stood outside the gates of the city lord's mansion. Shao Han was the current head of the Shao family in Wuyue City. However, he guarded the East Sea border all year round and was not in Wuyue City. Therefore, the city lord guarding Wuyue City was not Shao Han, but his eldest son, Shao Chongyu. When Ji Tianqing walked to the gates of the city lord's mansion, he was stopped by the guards. They questioned him about his identity and purpose. He took out the region lord's golden seal and said in a dignified voice, "I am Ji Tianqing, the region lord of Tianquan. I have something to discuss with your city lord. Quickly report to him." The guards saw that he was dignified and had an extraordinary aura, so they treated him with respect and did not dare to offend him. When they heard him call himself Ji Tianqing, the guards were shocked and looked at him with burning eyes. "Are you the legendary emperor's son, Lord Ji Tianqing? The #1 genius of our tribe, the youngest realm lord, and the most outstanding first prince is you, my lord?" The tone of the guards was very excited, and their eyes were filled with excitement and worship. They immediately bowed to him. Ji Tianqing put away the territorial lord's golden seal and nodded slightly. "That's me. Quickly go and report the news." Only then did the guards regain their senses. 2 of them hurriedly turned around and entered the city lord's mansion to report the news. Ji Tianqing stood at the entrance and waited for 100 breaths of time. Then, he heard footsteps coming from inside the mansion. 2 guards accompanied a middle-aged man as they quickly walked out of the door and stopped in front of him. The leader of the group was a middle-aged man who looked to be about 40 years old. He was tall and thin, wearing a purple gold robe and a noble jade crown. His aura was outstanding and dignified. His figure, appearance, and temperament were 70% similar to Shao Han. He quickly walked to Ji Tianqing and bowed with a smile on his face. "I am Shao Chongyu. May I ask if this is Lord Tianquan Territory Lord?" Ji Tianqing nodded and returned the greeting. "Greetings, City Lord Shao." Shao Chongyu hurriedly waved his hands and said in fear and trepidation, I don't dare. Skyline Domain Lord, you're making things difficult for me. A year ago, I heard about the various legendary deeds of Lord Tianquan Territory Lord. I have always respected and admired you. I didn't expect that I would have the fate to see Lord Tianchen Territory Lord's face today. I am really lucky. I just don't know why Lord Ji has come to the small Wuyu city. Xiao Chongyu's attitude towards Ji Tianqing was very respectful, and there was a hint of reverence hidden in his eyes. After all, Ji Tianqing's legendary deeds were all big events that shook the world. In the eyes of outsiders, not only was he extremely talented and powerful, he was also extremely arrogant and domineering. Xiao Chongyu was very puzzled. He had nothing to do with Ji Tianqing, so why would Ji Tianqing suddenly come to Wuyu City? He couldn't help but feel worried. Ji Tianqing would cause disasters or big events wherever he went. The small Wuyu city couldn't withstand Ji Tianqing's torment. Ji Tianqing also saw through Xiao Chongyu's thoughts. He smiled and waved his hand. City Lord Xiao, you don't have to be so distant and respectful to me. I have met your father once and we have a good chat. We can be considered good friends. My visit to Wuyu City today won't bring you any trouble. I am here to find your father and understand some things. Hearing him say this, Xiao Chongyu was stunned. He said in disbelief, "You are friends with my father?" My father didn't say anything about this. Lord Ji, I have been rude. Since you're here to look for my father, please come in and have a chat. Since there was this layer of relationship, Xiao Chongyu was relieved and quickly invited Ji Tianqing into the city lord's mansion. He led Ji Tianqing into the mansion and sat down in the guest hall. He asked a maid to serve Ji Tianqing tea and then began to chat. Lord Ji, you should know that my father is far away in the Eastern Sea and not in Wuyu City. He rarely comes back. May I know why you are looking for my father? If it is not too urgent, you can tell me and I will pass on the message to my father. Ji Tianqing took a sip of tea and shook his head. This matter is very important. I am afraid I can't ask you to pass on the message. I can only discuss it with your father face to face. I know that a powerhouse like your father will definitely set up a teleportation array between Wuyu City and the Eastern Sea to make it convenient for him to travel back and forth. City Lord Xiao, please find a way to contact your father and ask him to come back to Wuyu City. I want to discuss this matter with him face to face. This. Xiao Chongyu was a little hesitant and frowned. Ji Tianqing saw that he couldn't make up his mind, so he lied. City Lord Xiao, this matter is very important. Don't hesitate anymore and immediately send a message to your father. You should know that the Imperial Court's third prince has been imprisoned and the divine general of the Western Wilderness has lost his reputation. I am here today because of this matter. Xiao Chongyu suddenly turned pale with fright, and his eyes revealed a look of deep anxiety and worry. Of course he knew this news and knew that this matter was related to Ji Tianqing. Hearing Ji Tianqing's words, he suddenly had a bad premonition and was worried for his father. In the blink of an eye, his forehead was covered in sweat and his face was pale. He quickly cupped his hands and bowed. Lord Ji, this one will immediately contact my father and let him talk to you face to face. But no matter what, please believe Lord Ji that my father is honest and just. He is loyal and devoted to the Imperial Court and has absolutely no intention of disobeying you. This Xiao Chongyu, I'm afraid he is scared out of his wits. Ji Tianqing was secretly laughing in his heart, but he didn't show it on his face and nodded expressionlessly. Yes, I know all this, but there are some things I must ask your father face to face. Chapter 1133. Ji Tianqing sat in the main hall for the time it took to brew a cup of tea before Xiao Chongyu hurriedly returned to the main hall. He quickly walked in front of Ji Tianqing and bowed with a solemn expression. Lord Ji, I have already sent a message to my father about what you said just now. I believe my father will be back soon. Please be patient and wait for a moment. Ji Tianqing slowly put down the teacup and nodded. The one who needs to be patient is you. Since you believe that your father is fair and honest, why are you so nervous? This. Xiao Chongyu was speechless and did not know how to answer. Because your reputation is too great. Wherever you go, you will cause great trouble and shock the world. Even if my father is loyal and honest to the Imperial Court, it is inevitable that he will cause some trouble when he meets you. Even the divine general of the West Wilderness and the third prince of the Imperial Court fell in your hands. My father cannot withstand your torment. This was Xiao Chongyu's true thought, but he could only keep it in his heart and did not dare to say it out loud. The two of them chatted awkwardly for a while. Then Xiao Chongyu sat down to drink tea with him and waited anxiously. When Ji Tianqing finished the second cup of tea, the sound of footsteps came from the secret door at the back of the main hall. "Young Master Ji, how have you been?" The sound of footsteps gradually approached. Before the figure could be seen, a haughty laugh was heard. Ji Tianqing and Xiao Chongyu turned their heads at the same time and saw Xiao Han in a purple robe and a dark red cloak striding into the main hall. When Xiao Chongyu saw his father return, he secretly heaved a sigh of relief and hurriedly greeted him. "Father, you are finally back. Lord Ji came to Wuyue City this time to investigate some things from you." He was worried and could not help but remind his father to be careful. But halfway through his words, Xiao Han waved his hand and interrupted him. "Chongyu, I am going to talk business with young Master Ji. You may leave." Xiao Chongyu looked like he wanted to say something, but it was not good for him to say anything. He could only bow and leave the main hall. After he left, only Ji Tianqing and Xiao Han were left in the hall. Xiao Han sat down beside Ji Tianqing and asked with a smile, "Young Master Ji, if you need anything from me, you could have just sent me a message. Why did you have to come all the way to Wuyue City?" Ji Tianqing explained, "This matter is of great importance, so I can only come to the Xiao family and talk to you face to face." Xiao Han nodded slightly and said with a calm expression, "What is it?" "Young Master Ji, please speak your mind." Ji Tianqing didn't beat around the bush and went straight to the point. "A month ago, I went to the Flying Dragon City to attend a banquet. At Long Zaiqian's birthday, I saw him take out a mysterious gift that was stored in a treasure box from 1,000 years ago. Long Zaiqian used it as a prize for his birthday celebration, saying that he would give it to whoever could break the seal. I cracked the array formation of the treasure box and obtained the gift. According to Long Zaiqian, that was a congratulatory gift from you. I want to know the origin and information of that gift. I hope Sir Divine Warrior can tell me the truth." Xiao Han listened carefully and nodded with a calm expression. "Young Master Ji really came for Long Zaiqian's matter." "What? Could it be that young Master Ji suspects me of colluding with Long Zaiqian?" Ji Tianqing smiled and waved his hand. "Sir Divine Warrior, please don't misunderstand. I just want to know the origin of that treasure. This is very important to me." Xiao Han obviously didn't believe him and asked, "Is it really just because of this matter?" "It's absolutely true." Ji Tianqing nodded with a serious expression. Xiao Han frowned in confusion. "My son just sent me a message saying that young Master Ji wants to investigate me and interrogate me about Long Zaiqian and the Divine Warrior of the West Wilderness." Ji Tianqing smiled and said, "Sir Divine Warrior, please don't misunderstand. That was just a temporary measure. Otherwise, why would City Lord Xiao be so anxious and call you back?" Xiao Han suddenly understood and shook his head, not knowing whether to laugh or cry. "So that's how it is. Young Master Ji, those words of yours really scared my son quite a bit. You also know that our Xiao clan has always stood aloof from worldly affairs and didn't want to get involved in worldly disputes. My son's aptitude is dull. He's good at preserving, but not good at expanding. In the future, he won't be able to take on great responsibilities. That's why he was so easily scared by you." Ji Tianqing smiled and said, "City Lord Zhao's integrity is a good thing for Wuyue City. He was also worried about you, so he believed my words. As the saying goes, too much concern leads to confusion." Xiao Han waved his hand and said, "Forget it. Let's not talk about this for now. Let's continue talking about that treasure. Since young Master Ji wants to know, then I'll be frank. That mysterious treasure box is an item passed down from our Xiao clan ancestors. It is said that it has a history of nearly 1,000 years. However, the seal on the box is too special. Even a spirit-refining realm expert can't break it. No one knows what's inside the box. Our ancestors also didn't leave any information about it, so no one paid attention to it. When I was young, I won first place in a clan competition. The clan elders gave me that treasure box as a reward. Unfortunately, this treasure box is too old. I couldn't break it, so I kept it in my spatial ring and didn't pay attention to it for many years." Ji Tianqing listened attentively and silently analyzed in his mind. Although Xiao Han didn't mention the Xiao clan, he knew that the so-called clan competition and the clan elders were referring to the hidden sect Xiao clan. Xiao Han continued, "More than a month ago, the Flying Dragon City suddenly sent me an invitation, inviting me to attend the third prince's birthday banquet and head to the Flying Dragon City for a banquet. To be honest, I've never had much contact with the third prince. I've only heard of some of his deeds. I've always kept a respectful distance from him and never had any dealings with him. However, he's still a prince of the imperial court. He sent a trusted aide to send me an invitation card, inviting me to the banquet. As a subject of the imperial court, it's not good for me to refuse. After much consideration, I decided to use the excuse of being busy with military affairs as an excuse to decline the invitation to the banquet. However, I wanted to take out a congratulatory gift to show my sincerity. I'm estranged from the third prince, so it's impossible for me to give him precious treasures and abundant resources. Therefore, I rummaged through my spatial ring and found the treasure box that had been unused for decades. I gave it to Long Zitian as a congratulatory gift. Speaking up to here, Xiao Han revealed a self-deprecating smile and sighed with a complicated tone. I originally thought that there was nothing special about the treasure box and that it must contain an ordinary treasure. Long Zitian probably guessed this and took out the treasure box as a prize to liven up the atmosphere of the birthday banquet. However, we didn't expect that the treasure box contained the top refining material, star sand. Young Master Ji, I'm not afraid of you laughing at me. When I heard this news, I regretted it so much that my intestines turned green. Fortunately, this treasure fell into your hands in the end. I felt a little comforted. Chapter 1134. Ji Tianqing had already figured out the ins and outs of the congratulatory gift. Only now did he understand that this matter was actually a mistake. Xiao Han and Long Zitian's relationship was not good, but due to face, he gave a worthless, congratulatory gift. Long Zitian also understood this point, and thought that the congratulatory gift was very ordinary, so he took it out as a prize at the birthday banquet. But no one would have thought that in the end, this worthless congratulatory gift fell into his hands. He unlocked the seal of the treasure box, only to discover that it contained the priceless star sand. Long Zitian and Xiao Han were both very regretful, but he became the lucky one. However, he had already obtained the star sand, and in the future, he would use this material to reforge the broken sword, so it was impossible for him to return it to Xiao Han. Xiao Han was also very tactful, and did not have the thought of asking him to return the star sand. But Ji Tianqing's main purpose of looking for Xiao Han was to understand the origin of the treasure box. He had to get to the bottom of it, and get to the bottom of it. Lord Divine General, to tell you the truth, only I can break the seal of the mysterious treasure box, and it is very important to me. Please think carefully, what is the origin of that treasure box, and who made it? Xiao Han saw his solemn expression, and frowned as he carefully recalled. After a long while he recalled what happened back then, and said in a deep voice, "Back then, when the family elders gave the treasure box to me, they said that the treasure box was the treasure of our Xiao family's ancestor. After that, I also investigated and asked, and it was said that the treasure box was found in the secret room of the Xiao family's ancestor. However, our Xiao family's ancestor did not leave any information about the treasure box, nor did he say what was inside." Xiao family's ancestor? Ji Tianqing raised his eyebrows and asked tentatively, "Lord Divine General, was the seal on the treasure box cast by the Xiao family's ancestor? That treasure box has 1,000 years of history, which means that the Xiao family's ancestor is a powerhouse from 1,000 years ago." Xiao Han frowned and thought for a moment, and after weighing for a while, he nodded and said, "Our Xiao family's ancestor is indeed a powerhouse from 1,000 years ago. However, other than the ancestor himself, no one knows whether or not the treasure box was sealed by him." Ji Tianqing nodded slightly and thought to himself, "Back then, the manor head told me that Kenshin's 4 followers were Gu Yi and Xiao Shui. Previously, when I found Ran Huang Yi, I proved that these 4 words were the surnames of the 4 followers. If the Xiao clan's ancestor was also a follower of Kenshin, then it would prove that Gu Yi Xiao Shui had the word Xiao in his name. At the same time, it would also explain why the spirit formation that sealed the treasure case was a spirit formation created by Kenshin. As long as we can confirm that the formation on the treasure box was sealed by the Xiao clan's ancestor, everything will be solved." After analyzing it, he had already guessed the answer in his heart. Thus he asked Xiao Han, "Lord Divine General, may I ask if the Xiao clan's ancestor is still alive after 1,000 years? This. Xiao Han was somewhat hesitant. He remained silent and refused to answer. Ji Tianqing guessed his thoughts and said with a sincere expression, Lord Divine General, to be honest, before I came to Wuyue City, I already knew about your background. Of course, I didn't have any ill intentions when I investigated you. I just wanted to know more about the Shao clan's ancestor. I found out that the Shao clan is a reclusive ancient family. I also know that the Shao clan is the pillar of the human race and is loyal to the human race and the imperial court. After hearing what he said, Shao Han's expression changed. After thinking for a while, he nodded and said, That's right. The Shao clan lives in seclusion and doesn't participate in the disputes of the continent. They have always kept a low profile. However, the imperial court and the top families of the continent all know of the Shao clan's existence. With young Master Ji's power and status, it's normal for you to be able to find out about the Shao clan. Since you already know, I won't hide it from you. The Shao clan's ancestor is the founder of the Shao clan. My clan's ancestor has lived for 1,000 years and should still be alive. However, the ancestor has long been indifferent to worldly affairs and has been in seclusion for countless years. He hasn't even asked about the family matters of the Shao clan for 200 to 300 years. To be honest, ever since I left the Shao clan and came to the central region, I haven't seen the ancestor for more than 100 years. I don't know about his whereabouts. I can't be sure if the ancestor is still in the clan. Shao Han paused for a moment and looked deeply at Ji Tianqing. With a serious expression, he said, Young Master Ji, if you want to look for my clan's ancestor, I advise you to give up on this idea. The Shao clan lives in seclusion and doesn't participate in the disputes of the factions. They also don't want to be involved with the worldly affairs. Other than the Shao clan's disciples, outsiders are not allowed to enter the Shao clan. Even the emperor and prince of the imperial court are no exception. Ji Tianqing was silent for a while. He stood up and said to Shao Han with a serious expression, Lord Divine General, I understand what you mean. However, this matter is extremely important to me. Even if the hope is slim, I have to try my best to meet him. I hope that Lord Divine General can do me a favor. Ask the Shao clan to make an exception or provide me with clues to find the Shao clan's ancestor. After saying that, he bowed deeply to Shao Han. His attitude was very sincere. Shao Han suddenly hesitated. His eyes flickered with uncertainty as he weighed the pros and cons. After pondering for a long time, he stood up and said to Ji Tianqing, Young Master Ji, please get up. I promise you. However, I can't go against the ancestors' teachings and bring you to the Shao clan. I can only help you pass the message and report this matter to the Shao clan so that the Shao clan's elders can make the decision. As for whether the ancestor is willing to meet you, it's not up to you or me to decide. Ji Tianqing heaved a sigh of relief and nodded with a smile. Of course, I understand. I'm already very grateful that Lord Divine General is willing to help me. Shao Han nodded and said seriously, then it's settled. I'll send a message immediately and report this matter to the Shao clan. Young Master Ji, please return to the central region city and wait for my news. Once there's a lead, I'll send a message to inform you. At that time, we'll discuss the next step. What do you think? That's good. Ji Tianqing nodded and agreed. He cupped his hands and bowed. Thank you for your trouble, Lord Divine General. I won't disturb you any longer and will return to the central region now. Take care, young Master Ji. Shao Han cupped his hands in return and sent him out of the city lord's mansion. After that, Ji Tianqing left Wuyue City and flew into the sky as fast as lightning, rushing back to the central region city. After he left, Shao Han returned to his study and took out a jade slip to send a message to the Shao clan. Shao Chongyu stood at the side respectfully. After he sent out the jade slip, he couldn't wait to ask, Father, why did Ji Tianqing come to find you this time? This person's reputation is too great. He's a person who can stir up a storm in the world. If he wants to harm our Shao clan, I'm afraid it'll cause a storm. Shao Han shook his head and said with a solemn expression, Chongyu, although Ji Tianqing is arrogant and domineering, he has his own principles and won't act recklessly. Chapter 1135. On the way back to Central State City, Ji Tianqing was still silently calculating. Currently, the demon race's influence is rapidly growing. They are madly attacking the western wilderness and the eastern sea, harassing the human race's borders. Chaotic times are coming. Soon, The various races will definitely fight the demon race to the death. Between me and the demon emperor, there will be a fated confrontation. Before that, I must find Kenshin's 4 followers as soon as possible and ask them to come out and help. Only then can we resist the demon race. If Shao clan's ancestor is also one of Kenshin's followers, then there are only 2 followers left. I still need to continue searching. 5 days later, Ji Tianqing returned to Central State City. After returning to the monarch mansion, he summoned the steward and asked a few questions. Knowing that the 10 days he was away were peaceful and nothing major happened, he entered a secret room with peace of mind and went into seclusion to cultivate. Although, he urgently wanted to find Kenshin's 4 followers and establish his own faction. But he was very clear that increasing his own strength was the most important thing. If he was not strong enough, even if he found the 4 followers, they might not be willing to come out and help him. Therefore, whenever he had a bit of time and leisure, he would go into seclusion to cultivate and strive to increase his strength. In a secret room filled with spiritual energy, he sat cross-legged on a jade throne. He quickly swallowed spirit stones and elixirs, cultivating the way of the sword soul. 5 days later, he had accumulated a vast amount of magic power and nurtured his soul to an extremely powerful level. Then, his soul entered Kenshin's tomb and began to comprehend and practice the 9 swords of the burial of heaven. Whether it was the sword drawing style or the sword thrusting style, they all required millions of times of diligent practice to achieve the strongest effect and power. The process of cultivation was very dry and drained a lot of magic power. He repeatedly drew and thrusted the sword, condensing his spirit, will and magic power into one, constantly tempering his sword arts and comprehending his own sword intent. For 10 whole days, he did not sleep or rest, drawing and thrusting the sword more than 10,000 times. The grey fog in Kenshin's tomb was broken apart by him bit by bit, revealing even more empty areas. The previously empty space with a radius of 10 miles gradually expanded to a radius of 15 miles. More patterns and lines appeared on the mysterious formation on the ground. Unfortunately, such a huge formation was still only the tip of the iceberg. Ji Tianqing observed and studied it many times, but he could not find any clues. Instead, he became more and more puzzled. Even with his attainments as a Formation Dao Grandmaster, he was unable to see through the mysteries of this grand array. He couldn't help but suspect that the grade of this mysterious grand spell formation far exceeded that of a soul-grade spell formation. It was at the nascent divinity level, or perhaps, even beyond that. Unknowingly, half a month had passed. Through this half a month of closed-door cultivation, Ji Tianqing's cultivation had steadily increased, gradually advancing towards the 3rd level of the soul-refining realm. Moreover, his attainments in the way of the sword had doubled, and the power of the 9 swords of the burial of heaven was much stronger than before. The only thing he felt regretful about was that he still hadn't been able to comprehend his own sword intent. If he could add his own sword intent into the 9 swords of the burial of heaven and the soul-grade spell sword, he would definitely be able to bring his swordsmanship to the acme of perfection, possessing unimaginable power. But he also knew that something like comprehending sword intent could only be understood and not explained. Some sword Dao martial artists couldn't comprehend it their entire lives, but some people could inadvertently comprehend it. This kind of thing could only be left to nature and could not be forced. On the morning of the 16th day, he ended his closed-door cultivation and came out in high spirits. Not long after he walked out of the secret chamber and returned to his room, the housekeeper of the residence hurried over to report the news. "Domain Lord, good news, there's great news." The old housekeeper's emotions were rather excited, and his spirits were high. He entered the room with a flushed face and bowed to him. Ji Tianqing raised his eyebrows, vaguely having a premonition in his heart, and hurriedly asked, "What good news has made you so excited?" The old housekeeper hurriedly said, "Sir, just yesterday, the imperial court issued an edict, announcing to the world. The 3rd prince, Long Zitian, used sorcery to control the head of the Duanmu family and the divine general of the West Wilderness, as well as the heads of hundreds of noble families. In the past 10 years, the 3rd prince has used sorcery to recruit soldiers and buy horses, constantly expanding his power, invading countless noble families and torturing countless people. He has committed heinous crimes and committed all kinds of evil, causing the people to complain and greatly damaging the prestige and dignity of the imperial court. After careful investigation and evidence collection, the imperial court finally confirmed the 3rd prince's crimes. Therefore, the imperial court has decided to put the 3rd prince on trial, and announce the results to the world as a warning to others. When Ji Tianqing heard the news, he was immediately shocked, and a smile flashed in his eyes. Well, it has been more than a month since the incident, and the news has already spread throughout the central region. The imperial court should also make a judgment. Housekeeper, in the edict announced by the imperial court, did it state the result of the judgment? How did the imperial court deal with Long Zitian? The old housekeeper said with a smile. Of course it was announced, and it was already carried out yesterday. The imperial court has announced that the third prince's crimes are unforgivable, and he must be severely punished to rectify the situation. The imperial court has decided to strip the third prince of his identity as a prince, take back his fief, Flying Dragon City, and remove all his official positions and titles. He will be demoted to a commoner and sent to the northern border. All of the third prince's power and wealth have been taken back by the imperial court, including his relatives and family. They have all been demoted to commoners and sent to the southern border. From now on, the third prince can only stay in the northern border to resist the invasion of the demon race. He will never be able to step into the central region, nor can he be an official. The old housekeeper said with great excitement. To him, the former imperial court prince was an incomparably noble person. Now that he had fallen to such a state, it was really shocking and unbelievable. But after Ji Tianqing heard it, he frowned, and a cold light flashed in his eyes. I didn't expect the imperial court's judgment to be like this. Although it sounds clear and logical and extremely solemn, in the end, this punishment is really too light. He muttered in his heart, very dissatisfied with the result of the punishment. In his opinion, with the crimes that Long Zitian had committed, the imperial court should at least sentence him to death. But the result was not so. Even if the imperial court stripped Long Zitian of his identity as a prince, confiscated all his properties, power, and wealth, and demoted him to a commoner and sent him to the border to resist the demon race. But he was still alive and not executed. For a sinister, despicable, ruthless, and shrewd person like Long Zitian, all power and wealth were worldly possessions. As long as he was still alive, there was still hope. There was still a chance to make a comeback. Chapter 1136. Ji Tianqing waved his hand and dismissed the old housekeeper. He walked out of the Tianqing palace alone and left the monarch mansion. The old housekeeper did not enter Central State City and did not see the imperial court's announcement with his own eyes. He only heard the news reported by his subordinates. Therefore, Ji Tianqing wanted to enter Central State City and head to the city square to see the announcement posted by the imperial court. It was early in the morning and the sun was rising from the east. Central State City was bustling with noise and excitement. There were many pedestrians and it was very noisy. When he arrived at the city square, he saw that the square was already filled with people. Tens of thousands of people gathered in the square and surrounded the huge stone tablet in the center of the square. On the huge stone tablet that was 100 meters tall, there was a huge dark golden announcement. There were more than 10 lines of words written on it. The words were vigorous and powerful, showing the supreme majesty. It was signed with the imperial court seal. Ji Tianqing quietly stood at the edge of the crowd. He kept a low profile and silently looked at the words on the announcement. He saw that the announcement was basically the same as what the old housekeeper said. The imperial court did not execute Long Zitian. They only demoted him to a commoner, took away all his wealth and power, and sent him to the border to resist the demon race. Of course, the announcement mentioned the divine general of the West Wilderness, Yu Tianhong. Although Yu Tianhong was controlled by Long Zitian using evil techniques and had no choice but to do many evil deeds, he murdered countless powerful forces and innocent people. But he did not report what he knew and colluded with Long Zitian. He was willing to be his lackey, which was unforgivable. The imperial court decided to strip Yu Tianhong of his position and identity as the divine general of the West Wilderness, take away his land and family property, and return him to the imperial court's everlasting sacred mountain to guard the imperial court's imperial mausoleum forever. Just like this, the divine general Yu Tianhong, who was once incomparably glorious and respected by millions of people, became the imperial court's imperial mausoleum guardian. He could only stay in the imperial court's imperial mausoleum for the rest of his life. He could not take half a step out of the imperial mausoleum until he died alone. As for the position of divine general of the West Wilderness, the imperial court would soon choose a new candidate to succeed him. The imperial court sentence for Yu Tianhong could not be said to be too harsh or too lenient. It was a normal situation. After all, Yu Tianhong was a spirit realm expert who had guarded the imperial court's border for decades. He was coerced by Long Zai Tian and was only an accomplice. The emperor was benevolent, so it was understandable that he did not order him to be executed. While Ji Tianqing was reading the announcement, he could hear the discussions and exclamations of countless commoners. The people of Central Continent City were all shocked and incredulous when they saw the imperial court's announcement. To many cultivators and commoners, this was undoubtedly the most explosive news in the past few decades. It was hard to believe that a prince of the imperial court and a divine general of the Western Wilderness would end up like this. Heavens! The imperial court actually issued such an edict? This is simply too shocking. Hasn't the third prince of the imperial court always been conscientious and loyal to the imperial court? How could he be so evil and commit so many evil deeds? In the past, I heard that the third prince of the imperial court had extraordinary talent and was second only to the emperor. He almost became the emperor. Sigh. People's hearts are hard to fathom. Who would have thought that a prince of the imperial court would do such cruel, heartless, despicable and shameless things? That third prince is a low-key person. There are very few rumors about him in Central Continent and no one knows him. Even if he is an evil person, there is nothing strange about it. What I can't understand the most is that the divine general of the Western Wilderness is actually a lackey controlled by the third prince. This is too unbelievable. The divine general of the Western Wilderness has a great reputation. He has always been strict with his army and is famous for his outstanding military achievements. I used to worship him a lot. Now that I think about it, I really feel regret and shame. I actually worship such a despicable person. Whether it is the third prince or the divine general of the Western Wilderness, they are all top nobles of the human race. They even affect the face of the imperial court. After such a thing happened, the imperial court actually had the courage to announce it to the world. It is truly admirable. Yes, our clan's imperial court is just and strict. The emperor is upright and outspoken. He has always been praised by the world. Even if the emperor's son is involved, he will still deal with it impartially. As a citizen of the human race, I am proud of the imperial court's fairness and strictness. Many commoners discussed and expressed their own views on this matter. Although this was a shocking scandal to the imperial court of the human race. But the imperial court's attitude and way of dealing with it made countless people feel proud and admirable. However, the demon race and the aquatic race's warriors and citizens did not think so. They all raised their doubts. Half a month ago, there was a rumor in Central Continent City. It is said that Ji Tianqing exposed the third prince's scheme and had something on him. That was why the third prince's crimes were exposed and his reputation was ruined. Yes, I also heard about this. It is said that Ji Tianqing and the third prince are not on good terms. They hate each other and that is why this happened. Haha. If it was not for Ji Tianqing exposing the third prince, the imperial court of the human race would have turned a blind eye to the third prince's crimes. I think the imperial court of the human race is not as fair as the rumors say. According to the laws of the aquatic race, the third prince's crimes are not even enough to be sentenced to death 10 times. The imperial court of the human race's sentence is too light. They are obviously biased towards the third prince. Sigh, you can't say that. After all, the third prince is the imperial emperor's son. How can the imperial emperor bear to sentence him to death? No matter how many innocent people the third prince has poisoned, those people are nothing but ants to the human imperial emperors. To a supreme expert like the imperial emperor, there is no absolute good or evil. Everything depends on the method, the ability, and the result. Maybe in his eyes, the third prince lost to Ji Tianqing because his skills were not as good as his opponent. But his crimes are not worthy of death, right? I heard that there is an ancient saying in the human race that the winner is king and the loser is a bandit. The battle between the third prince and Ji Tianqing is like a battle between gods. Whoever loses will be exposed and become a detestable sinner. But in reality, which one of those great figures and experts isn't stained with blood and full of evil? The discussions of the aquatic race, and the alien race naturally fell into Ji Tianqing's ears. But he did not care about it at all. He was too lazy to care and explain. Of course, a powerful person should have the demeanor and bearing of a powerful person. No matter whether it was right or wrong, it would be judged by the future generations. How would the ordinary people know the truth and the cause of the matter? Those people were just standing there and talking. They were just guessing based on their own imaginations. He quietly left the crowd and returned to the imperial residence. Not long after he returned to Tianqing Palace, the guard commander came to report that the Emperor, Long Yunxiao, had come to visit. You're tuning in to the Xueqi's Martial Arts Saga YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.